Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away once more, it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but throughout the world, but also to welcome to the program 4 exciting, talented, individual and successful performers of this game who've come together to pit their wits, their verbal ingenuity, their humorous dexterity against each other as they try and speak for just a minute on the subject I give them, and do that without hesitation, repetition or deviation. And those 4 bright, intelligent people are Graham Norton and Tony Hawks, Clement Freud and Pam Ayres. Will you please welcome all 4 of them? Beside me sits Claire Bartlett. She's going to help me keep the score, and she'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the beautiful Old Vic Theatre in the great, fine city of Bristol in the West Country. And we have a fine Bristolian West Country audience in front of us, ready to cheer us on our way as we begin the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, the subject in front of me is being a rebel. Will you tell us something about that? That subject in this game starting now.
Politically, I was never much of a rebel. My failed anorexic friend Cyril Smith and I shared an office and tried to do things as well as we could and differently from others, but not rebelling as such. Now and again we voted against this party or that, and as a consequence nothing at all happened. This seems to be the fault of those of a political persuasion such as ours. As a child, I did rebel quite frequently. I remember my nanny saying that we were going to a pantomime. No, I said, not Peter Pan. I dislike that show because instead of employing human beings, they have a dog who is a nanny, which goes...
Tony Hawk's challenge.
I'm sorry, but I think it was a repetition of Nanny.
It was, yes.
It's going
That
so well.
Groan from the audience indicated how much they'd enjoyed it, and I'm afraid... I didn't realise how funny that was, actually. You can only say that in Just a Minute, because you're enjoying it so much and you groaned because you weren't going to get any more from Clement Freud on that subject. But, Tony, you challenged, and it's a correct challenge.
Thank you.
So you get a point for a correct challenge, and you take over the subject with 8 seconds to go, being a rebel starting now.
I like to read those town centre maps that say you are here from a distance using binoculars, because that's...
Pam Ayres' challenge.
I don't see what it's got to do with being a rebel at all.
Quite agree, Pam.
Reading maps, I'm afraid.
How much more rebellious can you be than that?
It just sounds as if it's quite a natural thing for a lot of people to do if you're eccentric as you are. So...
Sorry, the logic's lost on me there.
I know, it has to be, because Pam Ayres, I actually, you didn't establish that it was being a rebel, so you didn't, and you had 7 seconds you went. So, Pam, you've cleverly got in with 1 second to go. Being a rebel starting now.
Furthermore...
Clement Freud actually challenged before you started.
Oh.
What was your challenge, Clement?
Hesitation.
Yes. I'm afraid you do actually, I know you played the game only once before, but you must gather your breath a little bit more rapidly, really. But I won't... I won't... She's now playing to the audience, listeners. Because I was about to say I wasn't going to give it against her on this occasion, because she's only played the game once before. And what it means is, as it's an incorrect challenge, she gets another point as well, speaking of... So before you boo the chairman in future, please wait and see. So at the end of that round, Pam Ayres has got 3 points. Tony Hawks has got 1, and the other 2 have yet to score. So we move on, and Pam Ayres, it's your turn to begin. The subject, Scrumpy. Tell us something about Scrumpy in this game, starting now.
Scrumpy receives a very bad press and is often associated in people's minds with red-faced yokels dressed in smocks, legs akimbo, lying underneath some shaggy haystack, drinking the lifeblood out of a great flagon of Scrumpy, which is a vile fluid in which horrible ingredients such as dead rats have been dissolved. Whereas, in fact, nothing could be further from the truth, because our son James makes Scrumpy or cider, and it is undiluted.
So, Graham Norton, you challenged.
Now, I don't want to run before I can walk here. But was that a hesitation?
Definitely a hesitation.
Oh, right, yeah.
Definitely. You played the game a lot before. I don't see why you didn't recognise it.
No, because it could be a local word.
So it was a definite hesitation, Graham. You've got the subject. You've got 23 seconds. Scrumpy, starting now.
When Scrumpy was discovered, one can't help but wonder, how thirsty were they before they tried that? Perhaps it tastes delicious, but it cannot be denied. It looks like, well, I can't even tell you what it resembles. But you might find it in a hospital. Not that there's any of them in Bristol.
So Graham Norton was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so, and he's now just 1 point behind Pam Ayres, and the other two are behind him. And Tony Hawks, your turn to begin. The subject, a curate's egg. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
I don't actually know any curates, but if I did, I would be keen to get to know their eggs. Why I would wish to do that, I don't know, but we've already established...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of no.
I don't actually know. You said at the beginning any curates, and it went on, right? Ooh.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So Clement was listening well. He came in there, and you got a point, Clement, for a correct challenge. A curate's egg is with you. 50 seconds to go, starting now.
I happen to know how the expression a curate's egg came about. In 1895.
Pam challenged.
I'd say a bit of a pig's
Hesitation.
ear there.
Yes.
A hesitation, not a pig's ear at all, a hesitation.
Didn't hesitate.
Well, why not? There's a pause in between the
No.
sorry.
I said in 18.
Well, the audience are threatening me now, so I think I better... All right, the audience is always the final judge, so go ahead, Clement, get the benefit of the doubt. Another point to you, 41 seconds, a curate's egg, starting now.
There was a cartoon in Punch in which a curate was having luncheon with his bishop, who asked him, "How do you find your egg?" The reply was, "Good in parts." And this became an expression, a curate's egg, being somewhat better than bad, but not entirely wonderful. Why it should be called a curate's egg instead of a rat catcher's, a vicar's, horse manure.
Tony challenge.
I thought there was a hint of a hesitation there as he was going into a list.
There was a hint.
Oh, it's just
Listen,
mob rule in
I
Bristol.
There's only a certain... Listen, there's only a certain amount of dictation you can do in this show. You've got a curate's egg, the 11 seconds starting now.
I didn't actually read that edition of Punch because I wasn't born. It would have been a fate. Hello?
Graham, you challenged.
Hello.
Hello. Yes. So, what do you want, a hesitation?
I said hesitation.
Yes, 5 seconds for you. A curate's egg, Graham, starting now.
A curate's egg can be decorated for Easter, or indeed...
Pam, challenge.
Eggs make him sick.
Yes, I again got...
in themselves,
No, I've again got to
For the
refer to
safety
our
of the
listeners.
audience.
I mean, actually, I must explain to our listeners again. When we were here some time ago...
the thing is,
Pam
in
was
the
talk-
intervening months, Pam, I've completely got over that egg thing. I'd like to thank you.
Yes. But that was an incorrect challenge, so you have another point, Graham. And you have 1 second on a curate's egg starting now.
A curate's egg could be delicious if boiled.
So, Graham Norton was speaking as the whistle went, and he has leapt forward. He's now in the lead ahead of the other three. And Graham, it's also your turn to begin. And the subject is fashion victims. Maybe some of them have been watching your television show. Anyway, that's the subject, Graham. Talk on it, 60 seconds, starting now.
Fashion victims are something I know very little of, though I have heard some people describe me as less of a fashion victim, more of a fashion fatality. I don't really understand that. Sometimes I'm out in a discotheque and people are whispering, "Taxi for Mr. Mutton," because perhaps the outfit I've chosen is more suited to a man of younger years than myself. I don't agree, obviously. Fashion is a fascinating world in which people work, particularly in France. Oh, let's talk about that for some time. Yes, fashion victims in that country also reek of garlic. Not good. Mind you, from a distance, perhaps the outfit looks better. And the garlic, oh, I've said that again.
Yes, the irony of the show. You went for 48 seconds and they loved it, but you get no points because you were interrupted.
No.
And Tony, what was your challenge?
I think he repeated garlic.
He did repeat garlic. So you have a point for that on the subject, and you have 12 seconds. Fashion victims starting now.
I was definitely a fashion victim some weeks ago when I was attacked by a group of catwalk models as I walked down the street. I couldn't believe it. They turned on me. Jodie Kidd at the front was...
So, Tony Hawk, speaking as the whistle, Wayne gained the extra point. He's in second place. He's one behind Graham Norton and one ahead of Clement, Freud and Pam Ayres in that order. And Clement, your turn to begin. And the subject is the best suspension bridge. Tell us something about the best suspension bridge. 60 seconds starting now.
Isambard Kingdom Brunel is such a terrific name to give a child. There's little wonder that as a consequence, he built the best suspension bridge. Many people believe that it was George Best, but he had nothing to do with it at all. The suspension bridge is suspended from one end of the waterway to the other, and people may walk along it from left to right unless they approach from the opposite direction, when it would be in reverse. The suspension bridge...
Tony, you challenged.
Well, that would depend which way you were facing. Wouldn't necessarily be the reverse if you were facing the other way to the person who was watching it from the other side.
I think you're getting very convoluted
Well,
there.
I-
I think the logic was there, and keeping going under the pressure of the time. I give him the benefit of the doubt. No, Clement, it was in reverse. So there you are. You have a point for an incorrect challenge. 22 seconds. The best suspension bridge starting now.
Few people know who invented, let alone built, the best suspension bridge, and I can tell them, or would be able to, had I not mentioned the name of the person previously, which would cause me to get a buzz indicating repetition.
Graham Norton has challenged.
Well, now, I think weirdly, there was repetition. Was it a person? We had two persons. So the people don't know the person who built the invented
Man.
thing. And then, what did you say, man?
Man,
I'm so
yes.
wrong.
There was something else you could have had him for, but it's...
I can't wait to
Deviation.
Yes, and you've got 5 seconds on the best suspension bridge. Graham, starting now.
The best suspension bridge is surely one that remains suspended. That's all it has to do.
So Graham Norton was speaking as the whistle went, and has increased his lead at the end of that round. Clement Freud is now in second place, but only one ahead of Tony Hawks and Pam Ayres. And Pam, your turn to begin, and the subject is my favourite cousin. Tell us something about my favourite cousin, starting now.
My favourite cousin, Fred, was a sailor on board the aircraft carrier HMS Eagle during the 1950s. He travelled to such thrilling places and would visit us laden with exotic gifts. Imagine my joy as a child from the council estate to be given a white silk kimono emblazoned with dragons stitched in gold thread all down the back and sleeves. My mother, too, received a sumptuous pink fluted shell fashioned into the shape of a lamp and a glorious rug bearing eastern scenes of a caravan decamped in the desert and exotic dancers cavorting in the firelight. My cousin Fred, furthermore...
Clement, Tony. You're not popular, Tony. Why are you challenged?
Well, he's so fantastic, this cousin Fred, but she did actually repeat Fred. Repetition of Fred.
Oh, I suppose I
I'm
did,
afraid she did, yeah. Well, I've got to be fair within the rules of just a minute. So it was a correct challenge. So, Tony, you have a point for that. You have 9 seconds on my favourite cousin starting now.
My favourite cousin, Steve, was in the Navy and he brought me nothing. Every time he'd come back, I'd say, "What do you..."
So Tony Hawk, speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point. He's moved forward. He's only 1 point behind our leader now, Graham Norton, but ahead of the other two. And Tony, your turn to begin. And the subject is ambient trip-hop. All the Bristolians know what that's about, don't they? Tell us something about it, Tony. 60 seconds, starting now.
I'm absolutely delighted to have been given this subject, ambient trip-hop, because it's something about which I have a huge knowledge. Although, for the sake of... What's the hello?
Graham, you challenged.
Hello.
Yes.
It was a hesitation.
Yes.
Hesitation, right. Ambient trip-hop. You have 50 seconds, starting now.
We're all big fans of ambient trip-hop up here. The last time we were in Bristol, afterwards, Pam said, "Hey, let's head out to a rave." I said, "I'm not sure," but the others insisted. And sure enough, the ambient trip-hop played late into the night. The laughs we had, Scrumpy flowed. It was superb. Ambient trip-hop is just the world's best music.
Pam, you challenged.
I thought it was a hesitation, Nicholas.
No, it was a dragging
Sort
out
of a
of his
dragging
vowel
out.
sounds. Yes. But I think if he dragged a bit slower, it would have been. But he hadn't dragged down to that depth of that.
No, I think I had.
No? So you've got the benefit of the doubt, Graham, on this occasion, and you keep the subject, and you have 23 seconds, ambient trip-hop, starting now.
Whenever I go to the record shop, I immediately run towards the section marked ambient trip-hop. I enjoy so much flicking through the discs, records, CDs, albums.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of records.
You mentioned records before.
Did I?
Yes.
That's interesting.
said record shop.
Oh, I said record shop.
Well, that's... And this was records, singular and plural, you're quite right. Record shop. So this is records.
like I was listening, but I...
An incorrect challenge, so you still have ambient trip-hop. And you have 11 seconds.
How many seconds?
11.
11 of them.
Starting now. Starting now.
Ambient trip-hop is best listened to when...
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of best.
Yes, you did say best
yes,
before,
yes.
definitely. So Clement, right, you're in there, right. Point. 9 seconds, ambient trip-hop, Clement, starting now.
Cary Grant used to be called ambient trip-hop. He changed his name because it just didn't look right over the films.
Well, he didn't want the subject, Graham Norton, of ambient trip-hop, but he did wonderfully with it. He's increased his lead at the end of that round. But Clement Freud was speaking as a whistle went, gained that extra point as well. He's now in second place, one ahead of Tony Hawks and a few ahead of Pam Ayres. And Graham, we're back with you. It's your turn to begin. And a bit of a musical question again. What I liked about Elvis Presley. So can you tell us something about that in this game, starting now?
What I liked about Elvis Presley was his home, Graceland. I visited this place. Let me talk you through it. You arrive up a gorgeous driveway. It's Tom McAdam, none of your gravel, Bristol, no. It's really beautifully done. The front door is white, spacious, opens onto a wide hall. To the right is a small reception area, nothing much. To the left, however, is the dining room. Priscilla made it lovely. She went with a sort of pink and white theme. The china's still there to this day.
Clement Freud challenge.
Repetition of white.
Yes, there was
True.
white, yes. 26 seconds, Clement. What I liked about Elvis Presley starting now.
26 seconds will do me very well for explaining what I liked about Elvis Presley. Are you ready?
Tony, you challenge.
Yes, I think it was possibly a hesitation. No, I don't think he was very keen, was he?
He wasn't very keen. He said 26 seconds would do him nicely, but he did only 10, actually. You have 15 seconds now on what I liked about Elvis Presley starting now.
Maybe I didn't hold you quite as often as I should have. Little things I should have said and done. I did like that song, You Were Always on My Mind, and it was indeed something I liked about Elvis Presley. Big bells he went for too, didn't he?
So Tony Hawks was speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and he's now equal with Clement Freud in second place, behind Graham Norton, who's in the lead, just 2 points ahead. Pam Ayres is just a point or two behind them all. And Clement, your turn to begin. The subject is Croutons. Tell us something about Croutons in this game, starting now.
I think it's a huge mistake to put croutons into your soup. What you want to do is get a slice of fairly stale bread, cut off the rind, and spread a little Marmite upon it. Then cut it into cubes, which you fry in a mixture of olive oil and butter until they are golden.
Graham, challenge.
Well, deviation, because he's not talking about croutons. He's talking about this other better thing. And there was an it is, they are, not making sense bit.
Which one do you want?
I'll go with the second one.
I'll give you the second one of hesitation. 39 seconds for you on croutons, Graham, starting now.
What sort of culinary accident resulted in croutons? They're an awful idea. Soup should be liquid and lovely and easy to swallow. You don't want a pebble made of bread in it, do you? It's a vile idea. Equally in salads. You're chomping away.
Tony, you've challenged. Why?
Actually, I think he repeated idea.
Well, listen, Tony. And 22 seconds. Croutons starting now.
Elvis Presley was very keen on croutons. He used to have them every evening in his soup, thinking to himself, these are a great idea, aren't they? I shall pop them in and eat hundreds of thousands of them. I don't care even if my tummy gets a bit big. The Croutons were a lovely French family who lived down the road. They would visit us with loads of...
Well, Tony Hawks is then speaking as the whistle went and gained that extra point. And he's now equal in the lead with Graham Norton. Pam, it's your turn to begin. The subject is My Idea of Romance. 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
I have never gone in for the contrived idea of romance with intimate dinners for two, scented candles and sumptuous gowns. In my experience, this takes a great deal of pulling off and often goes pear-shaped. I find that the food does not work out as you had wished. The most boring person on the face of the earth comes banging on the door, and you dislike the fragrance of the flames. I once heard an American woman in a ladies' toilet proclaim that the pinnacle of her romantic aspirations was to make love on a tiger skin rug in front of an open fire. Apart from the obvious conservation issue here, I would be very afraid that a burning brand would roll from the fire and set fire to me camisole. I said fire twice. And I would feel inspired to clutch a fire extinguisher to my chest, even...
Well, Pam Ayres, she started with the subject, she finished with the subject. She gets a point for speaking as the whistle went, and she gets a bonus point for not being interrupted. Tony Hawks, it's your turn to begin, so take the final round, which is credit, and you have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
You know, it's not easy to chair a show like this, and yet our chairman does a fantastic job against all the odds, and he deserves some...
Clever Freud, I know what we know what you're going to say, Clement. We know what you're going to say, Clement, yes. I'm afraid as everything is so close, I can't give out any more bonus points. Anyway, I think for that... But Tony,
Is there a cash prize tonight or something?
Yes, Tony, you were interrupted. So you get a point for that, and you keep the subject of credit starting now.
It's quite important to stay in credit, if you can, in your bank account. Otherwise, you will have people coming round your house trying to take your things away. Hopefully, these will be people sent by that.
Graham Norton challenge.
Repetition of people.
Yes, you have the people twice, so you have a point there, Graham. They're clapping because they can feel the tension as we come to the end. You know, it's neck and neck, and they're playing for these points. 39 seconds with you, Graham, on credit starting now.
Would you credit that is something my mother says quite often. Sometimes she asks people to believe what they've seen. Other times, that's one word.
Tony, yes.
Well, actually, I think he thought he'd made a mistake, but you said sometimes and then you said other times, so that was all right. No, I withdraw.
knew that.
I withdraw.
But actually, the chairman usually decides these.
Sorry.
So,
And
Tony,
what a fine job you do.
I can't give any more bonus points. Sorry, Tony. But, Graham, you had an incorrect challenge, and you have 27 seconds on credit starting now.
Credit cards can be vaguely embarrassing because you've got no control over the design of them. Some of the credit things are made of plastic that you can put it in a machine in the wall, work very well to get money. Other credit
Tony, you challenge.
Well, I think he lost the will to live.
So we call that hesitation, and you've got in with 9 seconds to go on credit starting now.
Would you credit that is something that Graham Norton's mother used to say a lot to me when I'd go round to visit, and what a wonderful host she was.
Right, so Tony Hawk's brought their show to a close and got a point for speaking as a whistle went. And now, as I told you before, it's to be the last round, so I'll give you the final situation. A very fair one, very even, but somebody has to finish out ahead. But Clement, Freud and Ayres were equal in second place, only 4 points behind our joint winners on 14 points, which is Tony Hawk's and Graham Norton, our joint winners. So thank you very much. It only remains me to say thank you for these 4 outstanding players of the game. On my left, Graham Norton and Tony Hawks, and on my right, Clement, Freud and Ayres. I thank Claire Bartlett for helping with the score and blowing her whistle so delicately. Also, we thank our producer-director, Claire Jones. We are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we're most grateful to our lovely audience here at the Old Vic Theatre in Bristol, who have cheered us on our way magnificently. And from our audience, and from me, Nicholas Parsons, and our panel, goodbye. Tune in the next time we play Just a Minute.
And you can join Nicholas at the same time next week when the programme travels to Beverley in Yorkshire, and the panellists are Paul Merton, Ross Noble, Steve Frost and Kit Hesketh-Harvey.
Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country, but also throughout the world, but also to welcome to the show this week 4 exciting, talented and individual performers from the great world of show business. We welcome back with tremendous pleasure that delightful actress and comedy performer Linda Smith. We also have back again with us, which is a joy always, that very talented comedian and improviser and also musician, that is Tony Hawks. We also have back again the lovely Chris Neill, the comedian as well. And we welcome for the first time to the show a musician, singer and a comedy performer, and it's lovely to have with us Bill Bailey. Would you please welcome all 4 of them? And as usual, I am going to ask them to speak on a subject, and they will try and do that for just a minute if they can, without hesitation, repetition or deviation. And beside me sits Claire Bartlett, who will help me keep the score, and she'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Maltings Concert Hall in Snape, near Saxmundham and near Aldborough, in the lovely county of Suffolk. And we have a really hyped-up Suffolk audience in front of us here. And you can hear from the noise there's 2 or 3 people from Essex as well. And who've come here to cheer us on our way as we start the show with Tony Hawks. Tony, what a lovely subject. Growing old gracefully. Tell us something about that subject in this game starting now.
I consider myself to be growing old gracefully. I look rather sprightly for my 87 years of age. Nicholas, however, for his 34, looks rubbish. What he's been doing with his life, I do not know. Peter Stringfellow would be somebody who doesn't seem to grasp how to grow old gracefully. With his 1970s hair and string of young girlfriends, what he needs to do is buy a house in Aldborough and get himself a nice, reliable saloon car, put a blanket in the back, maybe some boiled sweets by the dashboard, that kind of thing. Watch Songs of Praise a lot, perhaps even tape it and watch it over again. Because this is what you do when you are growing old gracefully. I think I've...
So, Chris Neill, you challenged?
Hesitation,
There was an which we call hesitation, yes. And, Tony, you went for 48 seconds there. Well done. And, of course, the irony of this show, he goes for 48 seconds, he'll probably finish up with no points at all. Chris has got in with 12 seconds to go. He gets a point for a correct challenge. He takes over the subject of growing old gracefully, starting now.
As I look out on this lovely audience here at the Maltings Concert Hall in Snape...
Bill Bailey challenge.
No, you're not doing that.
So, Bill, what
They're not that lovely. I can see the lights up on them.
They are lit, but now I've already told them when I came up before the show how lovely they were, actually. So,
really?
I think they feel lovely, even if they're not. But, Bill, it was good to hear from you, and as the audience reacted so well to your comment, we'll give you a bonus point. For that, but of course Chris was interrupted. It was an incorrect challenge. He gets a point for an incorrect challenge.
Thank you very much.
Keeps the subject. 8 seconds available. Started now.
They are growing old gracefully indeed, although I noticed there's some people about 4 rows from the back whose hair, I suspect, wasn't that colour last week.
Whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point in this game, and that occasion it was Chris Neill, and with other points, of course, he's taken a strong lead at the end of the round. And Chris, we'd like you to take the next round, which is customer service. Customer service, 60 seconds, starting now.
I should imagine it's very good in some parts of Suffolk, although when I walked through Aldborough High Street early on today, no shops were open to prove that fact. In London, however, these very same stores, not the very same ones, I'm just repeating the very same.
Tony challenged.
Yes, repetition of very same.
Very same, yes. Tony, you have a point, a correct challenge. 46 seconds are available. Customer service starting now.
America is renowned for offering very good customer service over there. Very often you go into a place and they will say, have a nice day, and treat you very well. But at least you know in a British shop they mean it when they say, find it yourself. And that's important. There's none of this faking it. They really are intending to say that to you. Now, I would like to make a short talk on customer service.
Bill Bailey challenge.
Make a short talk? What's that?
Well, it's a string of words.
Is it? It doesn't even make any sense. Prepare a short talk, or produce a short talk?
I think
talk a short talk.
Bill, it's lovely, first time on, and you're desperately keen, and that's lovely. Really, in this game, it's so tough. I think we all knew what he meant by short talk.
I can't say I did.
Well, Chris, you live in a different world for some of us, but Bill, I don't think I can allow it. I think we understood within our knowledge of language that what he was trying to say.
Yes.
So he gets another point. 19 seconds. Customer service, Tony, starting now.
I was rather hoping that Bill would win that challenge because I've run out of things possibly to say, although I may become suddenly inspired. For instance, I went into a shop in Aldborough earlier this century.
Yes, Bill, you challenged.
Yes.
Shop.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Repetition of shop.
You picked that one up very rapidly.
Oh.
I'm delighted about that. Yes. So
okay.
you haven't played the game before. So you've got in, yes, repetition of shop, and there are 7 seconds on customer
7
service.
seconds?
Yes, with you, Bill, starting now.
My idea of customer service is a nice cup of tea when you buy a car, or a donut, for example.
So Bill Bailey was then speaking as the whistle went, gained an extra point for doing so, and with the other point he gained earlier, he's now equal with Chris Neill, and Tony Hawks is one behind them, and Linda hasn't got anything yet. Bill Bailey, will you take the next round?
Yes.
The subject here is insects. Will you tell us something about insects in this game, starting now?
Well, hold on.
Bill, I have to explain to you, particularly and also for the sake of the listeners, you don't have to react to the audience and play to them with facial expressions before you start.
When does it actually start? When you say
I
now?
say now.
But you didn't say now.
I did say now, and you played to the audience.
But they were laughing. I hadn't said anything. They were laughing.
I know they were laughing. They're a very responsive audience, and this is a strange game where you have to ride your laughs. You have to go through them.
Right, okay.
Yes.
All right, can we do it again then? So I won't ride the laugh. Don't
I
laugh,
think,
all right?
Chris,
Just
you
stomp.
challenge. I think, to be fair to the first-time player of the game, we'll start that one again and say the subject is insects.
Insects
Wait a minute. You wait for the all-important now.
Now.
No,
Insect.
I haven't said it yet. Bill, the subject is insects. 60 seconds starting now.
According... What?
Linda, you challenged.
Hesitation.
No, of course not. Another point to Bill Bailey, and he's been interrupted. And you have 59.5 seconds. Insects, Bill, starting now.
According to top scientists, there are literally millions of insects throughout every corner of the world. England, France, Italy, Portugal.
Tony, you challenged.
They're not in corners.
Yes, sir.
Corners?
No, insects
said,
are in corners of the world in England and France.
I withdraw my challenge.
So Bill Bailey, our first-time player of the game, is running away with it at the moment. He's got another point. He's still got the subject. 51 seconds. Insects starting now.
There are many different kinds of insects. For example, the builder wasp. So called because it starts...
Linda challenged.
Thought they're a bit of an
There was a bit of a hesitation there.
What,
Bailey.
in builder? You have to say in builder. I mean, that is a bit pedantic, surely.
Well, they do get a bit pedantic on occasions, and you've had a bit of generosity from them up till now. So we take it away now, Bill, and say, yes, hesitation, you've got it, Linda. 46 seconds, insects starting now.
Insects are the gardener's friend. I have trained a little troop of daddy longlegs to turn off the radio when the archers come on.
Bill challenged.
You said in turn.
It wasn't a sufficient hesitation to be penalised for it.
Okay.
So she has an incorrect challenge. She still has insects, and 39 seconds starting now.
However, their weedy girl arms aren't very strong, so I sometimes hear a little bit of said programme, which means I know a bit of the plot. Blimey, that Elizabeth Archer's a grasping
Chris
cow.
is challenged.
Repetition bit.
Yes, there was. Yes, you did
No, you
say
see,
it.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I was listening, you weren't.
You did say it before. So, Chris, another point to you, and you have the subject of insects. 31 seconds starting now.
Come the summer, I love insects. I fling open the window and say, enter my buzzing little friends into my home. A light where you feel free on the sofa, on the...
Tony, you challenge first. 21 seconds. Tell us something about insects, Tony, starting now.
A lot of people find themselves in sex. Religious sex, in fact. There was one, the cult of the solar temple. I remember everyone that went to this meeting was killed, and they never found out whether it was mass murder or suicide, but I remember thinking to myself...
Bill challenged.
Repetition, remember?
That's right, he did. Well, listen, Bill. So, Bill, you've got in another point, and, of course, 6 seconds only available. Tell us more about insects starting now.
The bee's knees.
It's a tough game, isn't it?
You're not saying repetition of ease, are you?
No, it's You said You
started with
You started with
That's how I talk.
I know.
I tell you, it's going to be a long evening.
It's going to be a long evening.
But you're in a strong lead, Bill, so Tony got another point. Insects, and there are 5 seconds starting now.
Arachnophobics are people who tend not to be keen on spiders.
So, at the end of that round, Bill Bailey, with all the points he got and all the laughs, gone into a strong lead. He's 2 ahead of Tony, and he's 3 ahead of Chris, and he's 4 ahead of Linda. And that's the situation as Linda takes the next subject, which is beach huts. A lot of them up here on the Suffolk coast, aren't there? Tell us something about beach huts, Linda, in this game starting now.
Beach huts are a charming and delightful way of spending £500,000 because I think you'll find that in Southwold, now known as Islington-sur-Mer, the beach huts there come in at slightly more expensive than a villa on the Côte d'Azur. But of course it's worth it if you can make a cup of tea whenever you want one, which is basically what English people want from the seaside.
Chris challenged.
Oh, well, it's a repetition of basically.
Basically?
I say it more confidently. There was a repetition of basically. I'm convinced. No,
I suggest there wasn't.
No, she never said basically.
It was a word beginning with B.
I know.
We've narrowed it down then.
I know.
But I'm not going to help you because it wouldn't be fair to the others.
You know what I'm talking about, though,
Yes,
between
I
you
do.
and me, though, don't you?
Right.
Oh, well.
So she was interrupted, and she gets a point for that, and she keeps beach huts, and there are 36 seconds available starting now.
Beach huts. You can sit outside at that little place I mentioned earlier and enjoy basking in that freezing Siberian wind straight off the steps. Definitely worth the money. However, many people now find their beach huts are in negative equity, so they're having to sell up their homes and live there all the time, which doesn't seem quite as appealing. It's quite nice of a summertime to sit around making pineapple upside down cake and thinking that you're Nigella Bloody Lawson, but when you have to be there in the middle of the winter, the appeal double.
Chris, you got in, and there's only 2 seconds left.
Well, there was a sort of hesitation-y stumble thing.
Yeah, I know, but you know, correct challenge. But 2 seconds to go on beach huts starting now.
Are some of my finest places I could possibly visit of a summertime.
Right, at the end of that round, it's all very even there. Bill Bailey is still just ahead of Chris Neill, who's just ahead of Tony, who's just ahead of Linda. Right, Tony Hawks, your turn to begin. The subject is the weather forecast. Tell us something about the weather forecast in this game, starting now.
When weather forecasters are in bed at night, I often wonder whether they feel a warm front moving in. Lucky them, I say, if that does happen. I do feel there are too much weather forecasting.
Linda, challenge.
I think deviation there. There are too much. He was very quick to criticise Bill.
Yeah, that's right. It's a sort of deviation from language and grammar as we normally understand it. Yes. Linda, a correct challenge.
Yes, OK.
The weather forecast is with you, and is 46 seconds available starting now.
The weather forecast is something that you get more interested in the older you become. At one time, I was quite oblivious to the weather forecast. Now I'm quite interested. Oh, is it going to rain?
To Chris, challenge.
A repetition of quite.
There were 2 quites.
Yeah.
Quite interested. Right. 35 seconds. The weather forecast starting now.
The weather forecast is on the television and on the radio, and also...
Linda, challenged.
Hesitation?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Chris, you have another point, and you have 30 seconds on the weather forecast starting now.
The weather forecast involves people, sometimes men and other times women.
And Tony, challenged.
Was there a repetition of times?
No, sometimes it's a singular
it's
word.
one word.
Yes.
Other times.
Yes, I've been... I'm a fool to myself and my family. You got me.
Yes, very clever, Chris. I don't know if you did it deliberately or not, but anyway...
Oh,
you've got
yes.
another point.
Yes.
You got another point anyway. 26 seconds. The weather forecast starting now.
How glad I am to manage to get hold of this subject, because I have so much to say on it. There are these people...
Bill, challenge.
Yes.
Yes, definitely. First-time players of the game always have the audience 100% with them. They picked you out. You got the there.
And that all changes, does it,
and
over
you've
the
got...
years?
No.
Right.
They're all rooting for you out there, and
God
you're in
bless
the
you.
lead. Keep it there going. 21 seconds. The weather forecast, Bill, starting now.
In the olden days, before TV and radio, weather forecasters would travel from village to village, Oh.
It's a tough game, isn't it?
Should have seen that one coming.
No,
Good news is you managed to tack one word in between, repeated. It's actually true. I came, the first time I came on this, I actually said I was watching Surprise, Surprise the other day.
So you watch out for those things now. So, Tony, you got in first with the weather forecast still going, and 16 seconds available starting now.
They're so obsessed by the weather forecast in America, there is actually a weather channel. And I was over there recently and started to watch this, and it's extraordinary. Different, good-looking hair...
Bill, yes.
Yeah, repetition of hair.
So you've cleverly got in, Bill, with only 3 seconds to go on the weather forecast. Don't start with starting now.
Weather forecast will travel from village to hamlet.
Tony, you challenge for the whistle.
Repetition of village. Yes, you said it. If you say anything in the first lot, you can't say it again in your second lot.
So Tony's got him with 1 second to go on the weather forecast starting now.
Neil Armstrong.
So it's a very close contest. Bill Bailey, Chris Neill and Tony Hawks, well, they're almost equal. Bill Bailey and Chris Neill are equal in the lead, one ahead of Tony Hawks and 2 or 3 ahead of Linda Smith. And Chris, it's your turn to begin. The subject now is Punch. Tell us something about Punch in just a minute, starting now.
Punch is a very dull magazine, which apparently started in 1841. I think that for a short while in the 80s or 90s of the last century, it did go out of print, which was a very good thing. But sadly, it's come back. It implies in the title there's something humorous to be found within its pages, but rather like Dante's The Divine Comedy, there's not a single joke to be found. However, a more enjoyable kind of punch is one that can be served in a bowl. My very favourite at the moment involves
Linda, you challenged.
It was the invention of the word soup.
Linda, correct challenge. Have Punch 30 seconds available starting now.
I dislike the drink punch. It's usually served at parties and people bung everything in it they can find. Bits of old fruit, drinks they brought back from holiday that have a plastic flower in them and look and taste like bubble bath. And then a few terrapins and goldfish and some generic...
Tony,
what kind of parties does she go to?
Yes,
well, I noticed this lot seemed to find it quite normal.
Tony, have you got a challenge within the rules of just a minute?
I haven't thought of one yet.
No, you haven't thought of one yet. Well, what actually happened was you interrupted Linda, so she gets a point for that. You got a lovely reaction from the audience, so I'll give you a bonus point. Linda, you got 12 seconds. The subject is Punch, starting now.
Punch does have the advantage of getting you really out of it very quickly, so you have no idea where you are, rather like driving in East Anglia, actually. I always think a bowl of punch can break the ice at the scene of an accident.
So Linda Smith was then speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so, and she's leapt forward, and she's now almost equal the other three who are in the lead, just 2 points ahead of her. It's your turn, Linda. Oh, fortune tellers. Tell us something about fortune tellers in this game, starting now.
Fortune tellers are all around us. For example, my colleague Chris here is a well-known palmist, and if anybody here would like to give him a hand after the show...
Tony challenge, yes.
I haven't really got a challenge. I just predicted that I'd challenge 12 seconds in that round.
Oh, I don't know whether to give a bonus on that or not. Anyway, oh, yes, give him a bonus for that. But you were interrupted, Linda, so you get a point for that. Fortune tellers are still with you. 51 seconds available, starting now.
I would love to see a fortune teller's edition of The Weakest Link. Anne would say something like, Gypsy Rose Lee, when was the Panama Canal built? And they'd say, I don't know, Anne, but I predict that tomorrow you'll have some more Botox and continue to look like a frozen chicken in a ginger wig. So that would be very enticing. Fortune tellers very rarely tell you anything you don't know. Like they'll say something like...
Chris challenge.
Has there been a repetition of tell?
Yes. They did. Well done, Chris. You got in there with...
Thank you very much. Thank you.
27 seconds, fortune tellers starting now.
I went to a tarot card reader at the end of the last year, and he presented me with one card. Oh, have I said card?
That's right, yes.
I know, I can't stop
Bill,
doing
yes.
that.
Yeah, yes, Bill Bailey, yes?
Me?
Yes, you?
Oh.
No, you got him first, but what's your challenge?
Well, the card.
That's right, yes, yes. I have to hear it, because you might have come in with a different challenge, which I disagree with, you see.
Right,
But I agree
did,
with that.
but it's in the future.
I know, it's in the future. So you step forward into fortune tellers with 21 seconds starting now.
When I go to see fortune tellers, I often ask them, what will the thing be on my head in 4 seconds?
Linda, challenge you. I know. What will the thing be on my head?
Yeah, the thing. The meaning the Babylonian the ancient city of
You mean, you were referring to Ur of the Chaldees?
Exactly,
Yes,
thing.
yes.
I have a Babylonian device, the thing, I call it.
I hope you've got a very long list of different definitions for You may need it, you know.
Yeah, just that one, really.
But to be fair, within the rules of just a minute, you did hesitate. So, Linda, you have the subject. You have 14 seconds. Fortune tellers starting now.
Fortune tellers often hang out at the seaside in little booths, usually with photos of long-dead celebrities adorning their walls, usually packed...
Bill, challenge.
What, long celebrities that are dead?
No, usually, she said.
Oh, sorry. I just wonder what long dead celebrities.
So you want a clarification? You're not making an actual challenge?
No, just a general clarification.
What's a long dead celebrity?
Well, that would be someone like Jimmy Stewart. He was very tall.
Does it for me.
You actually could have had her for usually, but you didn't. I was trying to help you there, but you didn't spot it.
Oh, God.
I know. She said that twice, but it's too late now. Fortune tellers is still with you, Linda, starting now.
Fortune tellers never have anything very interesting to tell you. They'll say something like, very soon.
Tony, challenge.
Repetition of tell.
Yes, you have tell. Yes. Yes. Tony's got in. You got him with 2 seconds to go, Tony, on fortune tellers, starting now.
I have a crystal ball which makes train journeys.
Right. So, we're moving into the last round. Let me tell you that Tony Hawks is now just in the lead, and the other three, Chris, Neill, Bill Bailey and Linda Smith, are equal in second place. He's only 3. Yes. I like to see all the points evenly distributed like that, and somebody often finishes up and we say is the winner, but who it's going to be we don't know as Tony begins the last round, which is pop. Tell us something about pop in this game starting now.
I'm so pleased I've been given this subject because I had a hit pop record in 1988 with a group called Morris Minor and the Majors, and it was called Stutter Rap, and amazingly there's somebody here that went out and bought it. I imagined it was in certain areas where I was popular. But anyway, pop music has moved on since then. I deteriorated, I would say, but nevertheless, there are a string of different artists, which I may list shortly, who get regularly into the charts.
Bill, you challenge.
Hesitation.
Where?
You said into the charts in a weird way.
Did the audience? I was speaking rather quietly, I missed it. The audience is the final judge. I'm sorry, Bill. I love your keenness, but we've got to be fair within the rules of just a minute. 31 seconds, Tony, still on pop, starting now.
When I was at school, we'd go...
Chris, challenge.
There's a repetition of when.
Yes, Chris. Yes.
Fussy.
Yes, when you were younger and you made this pop record.
I may well have repeated it.
Yes, that's right. So, Chris, that's a great challenge. 29 seconds, pop, starting now.
We all know that Benjamin Britten and Peter Pears moved to Aldborough for the
Chris, they didn't move here to throw up. Really,
No.
it's embarrassing. But, Linda, you challenge on what purpose? What was your challenge?
Well, Well, choose them, really.
Oh,
Could
yes,
be
all right.
hesitation or
Hesitation,
deviation.
yes, hesitation, that's enough.
You think that'll do?
Pop is with you, Linda. 24 seconds starting now.
Pop music is a wonderful thing. I myself enjoy many forms of this popular kind of entertainment, such as I love a bit of reggae music. I particularly like...
Tony, challenge.
A repetition of music.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but it's like that with reggae. It goes over and
Yeah,
over.
it does. It goes on.
Yes, right. Tony, you've got a correct challenge. 13 seconds on pop starting now.
Cans of fizzy drink can be called pop by a group of small children, say, if they chose to do it in that way. You never know. They may decide to call it soda, as they do in America. But that's another...
So, Tony Hawks then speaking when the whistle went. I'm sorry we didn't hear from you, Bill Bailey, on that subject, because you could have told us all about your time on the Buzzcocks, couldn't you?
Yes, Pop. I was going down the Weasel Road, but, you know...
The Weasel Road?
It's what the Weasel went when all the treacle rice business, isn't it?
Oh, that's right, yes. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm sure it's right. So I said that was be the last round, and afraid it is. Well, a very fair situation in the sense that Chris Neill, Bill Bailey and Linda Smith all finished up still equal in second place. But a few points ahead of them was Tony Hawks. So we say, Tony, you are the winner this week. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. It only remains for me to say thank you to these four delightful players of the game, Bill Bailey, Tony Hawks, Linda Smith and Chris Neill. I also thank Claire Bartley for helping me keep the score and blowing her whistle for me so delicately. We also thank our producer, which is Claire Jones. We are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we're very grateful to this lovely audience here in the Maltings at Snape, who've cheered us on our way magnificently. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, from our panel, thank you for tuning in, and be with us the next time we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my huge pleasure to welcome our many listeners in this country, throughout the world, on the internet, wherever you're tuned in, and also to welcome to the show four talented, exciting, experienced, and resourceful players of the game. We have on my right Paul Merton and Kit Hesketh-Harvey, and on my left I've got Ross Noble and Steve Frost, who once more are going to pit their wits, their verbal ingenuity and dexterity as they try and speak on the subject that I give them, and they try and do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviating from the subject. And that first laugh and a round of applause we got was not for me. It was for two members of my audience who couldn't decide to wait and stand at the side. They had to work their way in the middle of the centre row so that my concentration lapsed. And however successful they are, they will gain points and will lose points according to with their challenge. Beside me sits Claire Bartley, who's going to help me keep the score, and she'll blow a whistle when 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Picture Playhouse Cinema in Beverley, in that delightful Yorkshire town, and we have in front of us a lovely Yorkshire audience who are part of the Beverley Comedy Festival. They're going to cheer us on our way and enjoy the show. We begin this week with Ross Noble. Ross, the subject is, what goes on backstage? That's the subject. Tell us something about it in this game, starting now.
People backstage have many different rituals. I personally like to sacrifice a goat. This can cause quite a lot of problems as blood squirts everywhere. Nicholas prefers a game of cards, and it really can spoil things as I stand there at my altar, dressed in my robes, my big chicken's claws hanging from the side of my ears as I spin round, summoning up the Dark Lord himself. Who would have thought, as Satan looms across this cinema, people trying to watch movies, stop, go away!
Oh, yes, if you go for dramatic emphasis, It overplays it and you can't do it in just a minute. So, Paul, you challenge, yes.
A repetition of stop.
Stop, yes, unfortunately, because they were enjoying it so much. But it was a correct challenge. And you have a point for that, Paul, and as also means that you not only had a point, but you take over the subject, which is what goes on backstage, and there are 26 seconds available starting now.
Well, as Ross says, it's not very interesting. You tend to sort of sit around playing cards, or maybe often backstage isn't very nice at all, because the management of theatres reckon that if the public can't see it, there's no point in spending money on it. Even at the London Palladium, the mecca of light entertainment, you would imagine that perhaps backstage would be lavish. It isn't, although Yul Brynner in 1976 did have a red carpet installed so he could walk from the stage.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion it was Paul Merton, so at the end of that round he has got 2 points. In fact, he's the only one to have any points at all. So, Kit Hesketh-Harvey, will you take the next round? Oh, a topical one, the Humber Bridge. Tell us something about the Humber Bridge in this game, starting now.
I came across the Humber Bridge on my way here tonight, and what a fabulous erection it is, spanning as it does the two major conurbations of Bartleby, Lowold, and Kirk Ella. Combined population, possibly 16, but why does it have to be so inordinately, historically, extortionately expensive? £5 there and back. You can practically get a Fuerteventura for that. Or even nicer, have a night of lust with Nicholas Parsons giving you every kind of pleasure. Still, it is marvellous because it leads to this gorgeous town of Beverley with its super minster, terribly undersung and otherwise neglected, because I believe the Humber Bridge was supposed to be part of a motorway that went all the way up the East Coast. It was never built, with the result that nobody comes here at all. Until now, these people have been the forgotten folk of the East Riding. Now Nicholas Parsons has come... Oh, no!
It just serves you right, but try to have a go at Nicholas Parsons all the time. There we are. So, who challenged? It was Paul, wasn't it?
Yeah, you can't believe it, but it's a repetition of Nicholas Parsons. The subject being the Humber Bridge, but Nicholas Parsons was mentioned twice.
I know it was mentioned twice. I mean, some people say you can't mention it too often, but...
They do.
But in this game, of course, you can, and that was repetition. So, Paul, you have a correct challenge. And after he went so magnificently for 53 seconds... Oh. This is the irony of this game. He gives you that pleasure. He goes so consistently well, with great style and plum. He gets absolutely nothing for it. I was about to use a much more explicitly crude word than that, but thank goodness I didn't, because it's Radio 4. And 7 seconds are available for Paul on the Humber Bridge, starting now.
Many years ago, when the Humber Bridge was first being discussed, a prominent councillor stood on his hind legs and said at a meeting...
You were about to be challenged for him standing on his hind legs.
I know.
But you got going. You weren't interrupted. You get going. In fact, at the end of the round, you not only got a point in the round, but another one speaking of the whistle went. Paul, in this particular show, you're the only one to have scored so far. Steve Frost, will you take the next round? And the subject is the Snood. I think it's been chosen especially for you, hasn't it? Steve? Tell us something about the Snood, starting now.
If you're looking for cheap Christmas gifts for your nieces, or maybe your daughters, or perhaps your aunties and daughters and
Ross challenge.
Repetition of daughters.
Yes, there were too many daughters. Yeah. Yes, I don't know if it's part of your life or not, I don't know, but... Ross, you had a correct challenge. You have 52 seconds. You tell us something about the Snood, starting now.
I am a very lazy man, and because of that, I only ever eat super noodles. But so I can't actually be bothered to say the words of that particular product, so I've shortened them down to Snood. That's a new hybrid thing. Hello there, I'd like Snood, please, and I'll pour some hot water on top of them and enjoy them in a large bowl.
Steve Ross challenge.
Repetition, two thems.
Yes.
I enjoy them. I pour hot water on them.
Oh, you haven't won many friends with that challenge.
Well, you're not getting any snoods for Christmas.
Yeah. It's what we call a tough challenge, but a correct one. So, Steve, you have 30 seconds on the Snood, starting now.
There is a legend that on Beverley Westwood, the creature called the Snood lives. He crosses the race course and trips over horses as they come up the final furlong. That will be the Snood what tripped over that one.
Kit challenge.
Repetition of over.
That's right, yes.
Sorry.
No, what do you mean you're sorry? It was a correct challenge. Why are you
I was about to do them on trips, and then I suddenly realised it was no.
So you've got a point for a correct challenge, Kit, and you have the Snood, and you have 17 seconds starting now.
The lassie lost her silken snood is a Scottish euphemism for mislaying one's maidenhead.
Paul, you challenge.
Hesitation.
It was hesitation because he didn't quite know how to put it into delicate terms. Is that right? Paul, another correct challenge and another point and 10 seconds. The Snood is starting now.
Has there ever been a time when the Snood was in fashion? Well, the answer is yes. If we go back to the 19th century, and I'm thinking of 1878, Disraeli wore a Snood.
Paul Merton was again speaking when the whistle went. Gained that extra point. And for those interested in the point system, Paul at the end of that round has got 6 points, and the other three have all got 1 each. So they're all equal in second place. But it's early days. Paul, it's your turn to begin. The subject is going to the cinema. How apt when we're doing this show from this beautiful cinema in Beverley. The oldest working cinema in the country, for those interested in the history of the cinema. I should just throw that in because the people of Beverley asked me to do it. You have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Going to the cinema is a marvellous experience, and my earliest memories in life involved going to the cinema. I remember seeing Carry On Jack around about 1963, one of the lesser films in that canon, but I also saw a Tony Hancock movie called The Punch and Judy Man, which was a bit of a morose film.
Steve Frost challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, I agree with the hesitation, Steve. So you have a point, you have the subject. 43 seconds available. Going to the cinema, starting now.
The lights go down, the chocolates come out, the screen lights up.
Dramatic pause. Dramatic pause.
Thank you for understanding that, Paul.
Yes. That's the trouble of just a minute. You can't make dramatic pauses or dramatic repetitions.
Oh, now you tell me. I'm an actor, you know.
You have played the game before, Steve, with panache, but... right, Ross, you challenge? What is your
Hesitation.
challenge? Hesitation, right, Ross? Tell us something about going to the cinema. 39 seconds, starting now.
In the old days, you could walk in and watch Pearl and Dean appear on the screen with their lovely music. Pearl and Dean were...
That's quite... challenge. Yes.
Repetition of Pearl and Dean.
Yes.
I'm rubbish.
32 seconds. With you, Paul. Going to the cinema, starting now.
Undoubtedly, the greatest moment of my professional career so far happened about 2 years ago when I went to a cinema in Soho. I directed a film called The Suicidal Dog, which Steve Frost was in, playing the part of Philippe, the strong man, and he was very good. And as I...
Ross challenge.
Sorry, you said Steve was very good in an... I panicked and pressed. I'm sorry.
It didn't sound right.
You can see the love that exists between them all, but it isn't. It's the keenness. So it was an incorrect challenge, Paul. You have another point, and you have 16 seconds. Going to the cinema now.
And for me, working in comedy, I think it's the ultimate thrill. A movie. Television is great. Radio...
Have you had movie before?
No, cinema before. I didn't mention the word movies before.
I thought two goes... Oh, did you? I'm so sorry.
I didn't mention the word movie. Right, 11 seconds, Paul. Still with you. Going to the cinema, starting now.
There's something about...
Steve Frost challenge.
I just realised I've not been paid for that film.
Nobody's been paid.
Sorry, I just thought I'd bring that there.
I had to fork up 3,000 quid to get it finished.
Do you want a bonus point for the reaction you got from that remark?
If you got more, I'll have them.
Well, I gave him one. Come on, thank you. He loves getting his bonus points. So, but Paul gets a point for being interrupted. And he has the subject still, and 10 seconds available. Going to the cinema, starting now.
If you ever get the chance to see Charlie Chaplin, The Gold Rush, with a live orchestra, it is the most extraordinary experience because it is a silent...
Steve Frost challenge.
I'm going to go for repetition of experience.
Yes, you had the experience before. Well, listen, Steve, a point for that. And you've got in cleverly with 3 seconds to go, which is about your limit, I think. I couldn't resist that. But...
You got me. You got through. You got through that one.
Right, 3 seconds. Take a deep breath, Steve. Going to the cinema, starting now.
Going to the cinema is probably one of the most exciting things one can possibly...
So Steve Ross was then speaking, and the whistle went and gained an extra point for doing so. And with the others in their run, he's now in a strong second place, not far behind our leader.
Did you really not get paid for that? Really? Did you not get paid?
No, nothing. No.
I imagine he did get paid, but it was a very good line with that particular moment. The audience
No, I don't think
laughed.
anybody got paid. I'm just wondering who got all the money.
I mean, that man will... Frost will say anything to get a laugh, you know that. Anyway, don't...
That's not true, huh?
He's actually... You can't see from where you are, but he's actually wearing clown shoes. Oh, no, they're his real shoes.
So let's leave our private lives out of this and get back to just a minute. And, Kit, your turn to begin. Oh, what a pun this is. What? The subject in front of me is kit cars. Yes, it's a bit of a bad joke, but isn't it? Someone's thought of it for Kit Hesketh-Harvey. Speak on it if you can, Kit. 60 seconds starting now.
Yes, I get an awful lot of this strange nerd-like people shuffle up to me and say, I am a kit car enthusiast. Would you like to recycle the clapped-up Mondeo in the lay-by in the A164 and turn it into a Maserati simply with sticky-back plastic and a kidney from a Turkish organ donor? The result much more resembles the heaps of junk that Craig Charles shouts at until they're interesting on Robot Wars. But I cannot be doing with them. What happened if you have a crash? The whole thing collapses like the bog rolls it's probably entirely fashioned from. I've stopped.
It's sort of conked out. Ross, you were the first to challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes,
sorry, yeah.
yes. I have to hear it just in case you're a
That's the
different
trouble
one.
with kit cars. They just sort of conk
right.
out, really.
So we stop. We call that hesitation. 24 seconds with you, Ross, on kit cars, starting now.
Imagine the nightmare of getting your kit car home and assembling it only to find out it's a wardrobe. Oh, the embarrassment of turning up at the local raceway with your fantastic IKEA purchase. You would have to move aside all the coats and old bits of bric-a-brac which you'd put in there, or possibly you could convert them into a fashionable spoiler as you raced
So Ross Noble kept going to the whistle when gained that extra point, and he's now equal in the lead with Paul Merton, followed by Steve Frost and Kit Hesketh-Harvey. And Steve, it's your turn to begin. The subject now, oh, an erudite one, calculus. Tell us something about calculus. I'm sure it's been...
I just thought I'd buzz now.
I thought he'd been specially chosen for him because he's a latent mathematician or something. But anyway, Steve, this is the subject in front of me. It's your turn to begin, so you have to take it. And you have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
Captain Haddock runs into the room. Tintin's asleep.
Paul challenge.
Repetition of tin.
Oh.
I didn't do it. Yeah, that's it. You play the game.
That's the only card I had on that one.
Right, you wouldn't have to play the game, and there you are. You're caught by 58 seconds. Perhaps you're pleased to have lost it, I don't know, Steve. Anyway.
Should we let
but
Paul
let's
run
hear
with
from
this
you,
one?
Paul, on calculus starting now.
There are many different forms of calculus. The one I'm familiar with may be unfamiliar to some of you out there. First of all, it's an algebraic equation. If A equals X, then Y must be similar to W. What this means in real life is a tractor which is coming towards you at 14 miles an hour to an Eskimo will be seen to be coming at you... Oh, no.
Ross.
Sir.
Big challenge, yes.
Repetition.
Repetition, yes. What?
Coming at you.
That's right, yes, correct, yes. I have to be sure you know. Right, so there we are, so 34 seconds coming at you. Calculus starting now.
Calculus was the most rubbish gladiator that ever lived. The people of Rome would stand up and shout, don't put Calculus into the ring. He doesn't draw his sword and bring blood out of people. He's just counting all the time, and sometimes he'll lay out a big piece of checkered paper on the floor in which to help him with that that, and he didn't have a calculator. I'm still going.
Well, hesitation.
Yes, I agree.
Yes,
I
think
agree.
probably.
Hesitation. Yes. Let's hear from you. So everybody's talking on calculus, and it's now Kit's turn. 10 seconds available. Kit starting now.
I'm extremely reluctant to take up this subject because I was terribly bad at calculus at school. I remember something about an antiderivative function.
Paul challenge.
Well, give it to somebody who knows what they're talking about. I'll have it.
But I think you've demonstrated you don't know what you're talking about.
I made a mistake on coming towards. I rubbed it out and I carried on.
No, he hasn't deviated, so he has 4 seconds to continue on calculus, Kit, starting now.
The farm machinery is heading towards the Centurion, but it depends on the integrated integer, don't you think?
So Hesketh-Harvey was speaking of this, when gained that extra point. He has leapt forward. He's still in 4th place, but he's only 1 point behind Steve Frost. A few points behind our equal leaders, Ross Noble and Paul Merton. And you needn't look at Kit, as if I didn't know, because I did mathematics university, and I know about the integral calculus and the differential calculus and the difference between
Perhaps
the
you
two
could
of them.
explain it to the good folk of Beverley. See, Nicholas, why not, as a one-off, it's 35 years of just a minute, why not take the subject of calculus and see if you can speak for a minute about hesitation, repetition...
Calculus differentiates into 2 different things. There's the differential calculus and the integral calculus, and they are mathematical terms which will give you a great insight into this great and mystical world of maths. Also, calculus can be the kidney stones that you have, the remains that get into your kidneys and so forth. It is because it's a residue. Now, mathematically speaking, there are different terms that you can use in terms of the reason that I'm speaking for, I suppose. So I went for 33 seconds and nobody challenged me.
I have to hand it to you. Nobody can touch you.
Yes. I'm glad you don't.
You're one of a kind.
Imagine if you'd done 35 seconds for the 35 years. How amazing would that have been?
Yeah, 35 years, right. Anyway, it was... it was thrown at me and my mind was tuned in to being a chairman and not to being a competitor, so...
it was excellent, I thought.
We thought it was marvellous.
Right.
In fact, we'd like to hear it again, wouldn't we?
Let me give you the score at the end of that round. I've told you, give me the score once, right. Paul Merton, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is second-hand car salesman. Second-hand, it's been written rather fine, it's been written as 3 different words. Second-hand car salesman. Second-hand car salesman, right. That's the subject. 60 seconds starting now.
Never buy a second-hand car salesman. You don't know where they've been. A lot of them have been welded together. In fact, there's 2 of them. You'll find one second-hand car salesman at the top, and the arse belongs to somebody completely different. I had a second-hand car salesman at home, and you couldn't trust him at all because he would fall to bits. He'd be sitting there watching the television, and suddenly the back end would fall off. You'd pick it up, shove it.
Ross Noble challenge.
Was it repetition of back?
No, we had arson back.
That's right, yes. Sorry, but Ross, an incorrect challenge. Paul's taken another point and going to the lead in 39 seconds. Second-hand car salesman starting now.
Well, they don't rank very highly in the public perception, do they? They're round about journalists and estate agents. Second-hand car salesmen can be rather dodgy characters because if you bow into a show... I thought I'd chuck a bit of a slice landing.
Right, Kit, you challenge.
I challenged because of deviation from sense.
From
bow into...
Yes, bow into a show.
And a bit of hesitation, too.
From language or words as we understand them. Right. Do you have another point, Kit, and you have 27 seconds. Tell us something about second-hand car salesmen starting now.
We kit car owners assume that the class went out of motoring when the dashboard started to incorporate digital clocks. What you must look for is a second-hand car salesman who will put those little windy things on a proper dial clock that will tell you...
Paul challenge.
Repetition of clock.
Yes, he had the clock before, yes. Paul, you have 11 seconds. Correct challenge. Second-hand car salesman is back with you starting now.
One of the worst experiences of my life happened in Birmingham in 1978. I'd recently passed my driving test and I went into this garage and I said to the second-hand car salesman,
And we'll never know what he said to the second-hand car salesman. Do you remember what you said?
No, I made it up. Everything I say is rubbish. I shouldn't really say that. It's a tactic.
Paul Merton is in the lead as we go into the final round. So, Paul Merton's just in the lead, just ahead of Ross Noble, and in third place equal are Steve Frost and Kit Hesketh-Harvey. And Ross, it's your turn to begin. And the subject is raining cats and dogs. A fascinating expression. Tell us about it in this game starting now.
When it's raining very heavily, people say it's raining cats and dogs. Just a mild drizzle, they like to say it's raining gerbils and hamsters.
Right. They like to say what? I didn't quite hear it.
It's raining gerbils and hamsters.
That was rather sweet, but Steve challenged you before.
A repetition of say. People say...
I know, it was repetition, yes. But I wanted to hear the joke, and it didn't.
Well, it goes on the radio, Nicholas. You can hear it then.
I was trying to think of a response to say, but I'd like to use it before that, but I don't think it's very funny, so I won't say it.
It goes out on the radio.
Did you think you were on television?
I thought we were auditioning for job as ushers.
I'm surprised you thought it was television wearing the sweater that you've got on. But, Steve, you challenged, and it was a repetition, and you have a correct challenge, and you have 53 seconds. Raining cats and dogs starting now.
The expression raining cats and dogs comes from Cornwall and the old tin mine workers. When the rain came down...
Ross challenged.
He said tin earlier.
I know.
Tin.
No.
That was in another round.
Now give us a break, guys.
Don't worry, you've got a break. You get a point for that. An incorrect challenge. He said tin in another round.
Sorry, I was being mischievous.
I know you were, and we enjoyed it. And you gave, a result of your mischievous ways, you gave Steve another point, and he has 47 seconds to tell us more about raining cats and dogs starting now.
In 1947 in Scarborough, it did actually rain, literally, cats and dogs. The local kennel and cattery got blown up into the sky by a fierce wind coming off the sea, and it all landed down on the castle and made such weird noises such as woof.
Ross, you challenge.
If I'm not having the noises, no.
So your
there
challenge...
There was a slight hesitation.
There was a slight hesitation, yes. And anyway, if it was a cattery, what were the dogs doing there?
It's only pretend, Nicholas.
Could have been on holidays.
Visiting friends.
So...
Lunch.
There are many reasons.
But the cats weren't there because they were at the mousery.
So, Ross, you have a correct challenge. You have 30 seconds. Tell us something about raining cats and dogs starting now.
If somebody runs into a pub and says, it's raining cats and dogs, Rolf Harris belts for the door because he feels that his services are required down at the animal hospital. He gathers up the splints. He gathers up cushions.
I know, but it is part of the game. Kit, you challenge.
Repetition of gathers up.
Gathers up, correct, Kit. And you have 16 seconds. Tell us something about raining cats and dogs starting now.
In the Midwest of America, it rains Judy Garland and Munchkins when the tornadoes come down. I suppose the raining dogs at the moment must be corgis, although Princess Anne's bull terrier is giving them a very good run for their money. The expression is a bizarre one. I was sitting watching Lord of the Rings and getting DVT.
So, Kit Hesketh-Harvey was speaking as the whistle went and brought that round to an end, and also the show to a close, and he did it with a delightful climax. And I'll just give you the final situation for those interested in the point situation. Kit Hesketh-Harvey and Steve Frost finished equal in third place, but they were only a point or two behind Ross Noble, and Ross was only 2 points behind Paul Merton. So, Paul, we say, within the rules of this game, you were our winner. Congratulations. So it only remains for me to say thank you to our four delightful and talented players of the game. Paul Merton, Kit Hesketh-Harvey, Ross Noble and Steve Frost. Also, I think, Claire Bartlett, who's helped me keep the score. She'd blown a whistle with supreme delicacy whenever the 60 seconds was up. We thank our producer and director, Claire Jones. We are indebted to Ian Messiter, who thought of this game, which we enjoy playing. And we are very grateful to this lovely Yorkshire audience here in the Picture Playhouse Cinema. Who have been so delightful as they've cheered us on our way. From our lovely audience and from Neill, Nicholas Parsons and from our panel, goodbye until the next time you tune in and you listen to Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello. My name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my infinite pleasure to welcome our many listeners through, not only in this country, but of course throughout the world, and also to welcome onto the show this week four clever, talented, experienced players of this game who once more are going to pit their knowledge, their wit, their humour, their verbal dexterity and ingenuity on a subject that I give them, and they will try and do that without hesitation, repetition or deviation. And those four bright sparks are Paul Merton, Wendy Richard, Lisa Tarbuck and Clement Freud. Please welcome all four of them. Beside me sits Janet Staplehurst, who's going to help me keep the score, and she'll blow the whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Drill Hall, which is just off Tottenham Court Road, actually, if you're interested, and not far from the sort of West End of London. It's sort of in the central part of London, and we have a fine London audience here. I'm allowed to repeat things.
No, I was just wondering, are we playing Just a Minute or Mornington Crescent?
No, Mornington Crescent, we leave that entirely to, I'm sorry, I haven't a clue. We have this lovely audience anyway, and we're going to cheer us on our way as we start the show with Wendy Richard, the subject. I don't know why they've chosen it for it. The Butchers. Tell us something about the Butchers in Just a Minute, starting now.
I get on very well indeed with the butchers in my corner shop. Whenever I go in there, they always know what I want and the fact that I will not order goods in kilos. I'm still pounds and ounces, and they get on with it, and there I get the exact amount required for whatever recipe I might be doing. I hasten to add, I'm a very good cook. I'm not much...
Please, the challenge.
Yeah, you're going to hate me, but there's been a lot of IMs.
Yes, you were saying I am.
I and I am.
Oh, what's that?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Mm.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Lisa, you had a correct challenge there. 37 seconds on the Butchers, starting now.
My Butchers is the best butchers in North London. He sells fantastic. That'll learn me, won't it?
Hesitation.
Yes. You got the Butchers.
Okay.
And there are 31 seconds starting now.
There is a butcher near me who doesn't actually sell any meat. In fact, he's a greengrocer. He sells apples, pears, bananas, cherries, plums, all kinds of different produce.
Clement challenge.
Deviation.
Why?
Because it's about butchers.
But he's a butcher, doesn't sell any meat. He calls himself a butcher, but he actually sells fruit.
No.
You don't... I didn't say it made sense, I just said it happened.
And this is the problem, isn't it? Because it doesn't make sense, but it's perfectly possible he could be a butcher who sells vegetables.
He's allergic to meat. He's allergic to meat.
It's perfectly possible. The audience say, Clement, you've got it right. Clement, 19 seconds, the Butcher's starting now.
I know an undertaker called Mr. Butcher who sells cat food. It's fairly
Well, that's exactly the same. I'm catching him on what he caught Paul on.
That's right, so you have the subject. Come on, Lisa, you have the subject. 13 seconds, the Butcher's starting now.
My Butcher's peppery chipolatas. Oh!
Wendy, you've got in when you've got 11 seconds on the Butcher's starting now.
There used to be a lovely butcher's in Bloomsbury with the most wonderful tiles on the walls depicting cows and sheep and a lovely green hillside with blue sky.
Clement challenge.
Reputation of lovely.
There were two lovelies there, I'm afraid.
Oh, dear.
The lovely butcher and lovely scenery. What? Oh, you've got it with 1 second to go. Yes, that hasn't won many friends. But anyway, it's correct. That's the game. Clement, the butcher's 1 second starting now.
Butcher, baker, candlestick maker.
Well, at the end of that round, Clement Freud was again speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point for doing so with others in the round. He's increased his lead over the other three. And Clement Freud, would you take the next round? The subject is congestion. That's applicable to London. 60 seconds starting now.
A surfeit of almost anything could be called congestion. Too much mucus.
Paul challenge.
Well, there was a hesitation there, but I think it's also deviation as well. A surfeit of anything can be called congestion. The ocean is a surfeit of water, but you wouldn't call that congestion.
No.
I think, speaking sort of colloquially and broadly and conversationally, Clement was not actually deviating, and he certainly didn't hesitate either. So he gets a point because he was interrupted there.
Let's not have anarchy, thank you.
So, Clement, you've got 55 seconds to continue on congestion starting now.
Too much mucus in the nose, wax in the ears.
Wendy, challenge.
I just don't want to start talking about mucus. I'll be silly.
Well, in just a minute you can talk about whatever you want.
Yes, I know, but it's not very nice, is it?
Of course it's not very nice, but I mean, there are all kinds of things in life that are not very nice, but we sometimes talk about them. And
yes, but not on the radio, not on Radio 4.
Anyway,
Well,
Radio 3 is the mucus station,
Yeah.
surely.
He wasn't hesitating, deviating or repeating anything. So, Clement, another point to you in 52 seconds. Congestion starting now.
I was not going to mention excrement in the colon, but the word is now getting...
Some people say it's the best place for it. Hesitation.
Yes, Paul, he did hesitate, and well he might. Right, Paul, you have a correct challenge. You have the subject of congestion. My goodness, we've only been going for 19 seconds, and we've still got 41 to go. Congestion's with you, starting now.
41 plus 19 makes 60. That'd be about right. I think London at this time of year is now experiencing a kind of...
Lisa, challenge.
Visually, that was a hesitation, actually.
Vocally, we say as well. So, Lisa, you have the subject, and it's congestion, and there are 32 seconds available, starting now.
This week, there's been massive congestion around where I live, and I'm talking, of course, about cars. Mercury has been retrograde, so tempers have been frayed. And sitting in my motor, watching people do ridiculous things like dump rubbish out the window or gesticulate at someone who's trying to cut in. It's all part and parcel of London life, and congestion...
Clement challenge.
Repetition of London.
Yeah, okay.
In that part of London where I live, you said, and then you mentioned London again. Yes, Clement, another point to you, and 13 seconds congestion starting now.
The resurrection of the word congestion is likely to be due to Ken Livingstone's legislation. He is the mayor of this town, unless there is a repeat of this programme.
Wendy Richard challenge.
City, not a town.
The City of London's in the centre, and he's the mayor of the Greater London Council, so I think it's probably... He's not actually inaccurate saying that. Yeah. 2 seconds to go on congestion, starting now.
Congestion starting now.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Clement Freud, and with other points he gained in the round, he's got a strong lead. And Lisa, your turn to begin. Contact lenses. Can you tell us something about contact lenses in this game, starting now?
Contact lenses can be worn instead of spectacles to enhance one's appearance, and many a face has the weirdest of looks about it when they've taken their glasses off and suddenly start to wear said contact lenses. It seems odd. There are clubbers' contact lenses with cat's eyes or peepers of a crocodile or just the general colour of...
Wendy challenge.
Too many yours.
Yeah, that'll be right.
Yes, there were. Right. It's pretty sharp, but there we are. It's correct. Contact lenses, 41 seconds. Wendy, starting now.
I could never get on with contact lenses. I actually wear glasses. In fact, I went to have my eyes tested this morning, and I'm happy to say my sight has improved. So all the spectacles that I have at home, I've got to give away to a charity because I can't see through them.
Clement Freud challenged.
There are a lot of eyes, I thought.
Yeah,
no, but there's
But it is about
me
contact
eye
lenses.
and that eye. And then when I do it in Scottish, there's Ock eye.
No, but you did say, I've got to do this, and I went there, and I did that. And though they'll let 1 or 2 go, 3 or 4, I don't think we can, Wendy. Sorry about that. You're looking really as if you're very upset. I do apologise.
No,
It's the way we
I'm
play the
ecstatic, Nicholas. Don't worry about me.
And the 25 seconds for you, Clement, on contact lenses, starting now.
The main market in contact lenses is via people who lose them. They go to opticians and say, I would like to buy a set of contact lenses, and then put them away and can't remember where it was. They place them. As a consequence, they return to the edifice which housed the...
Wendy challenge.
I think he's struggling a bit
He's
now.
really struggling.
No,
but
it's doing very nicely.
But he's...
Timing myself.
Have you a challenge within the rules of just a minute?
All right, he was starting to hesitate.
He was starting, but he didn't actually achieve it. Clement, an incorrect challenge, 3 seconds, contact lenses starting now.
Buy 2, get 1 free.
So Clement Freud is still speaking as a whistle went in each round and getting other points. He's increasing his lead all along the line. And Paul Merton, your turn to begin. The subject is now molehills. Tell us something about molehills in just a minute, starting now.
Well, it's capable of several meanings. There is the molehill that you find in your lawn, created by the mole who's been digging away, trying to get at the various grubs and all the other things that might be living in your bottom of your garden. Or there is indeed the actual molehill that you can turn into a mountain by worrying about something, pulling away, fretting, thinking that the problem is actually bigger than it actually is.
Lisa, challenge.
2 actuallys.
Oh, 2 actuallys, I'm afraid. So, Lisa, you got in with 40 seconds ago. Tell us something about molehills, starting now.
To get rid of moles, it's quite a good idea to start mowing the said meadow or lawn that you possess because they don't like the vibration. I heard that on a very interesting gardening programme on Radio 4. Another way to get rid of moles is wait till...
Clement, challenge.
Repetition of a get rid of.
Get rid of. The subject is molehills and not get rid of, yes.
Oh.
Right. Who challenged? It was you, Clement. Molehills is with you. 26 seconds starting now.
Limericks tend not to work on just a minute, but I will try regardless. The delectably lovely Miss Coleshill once chanced to alight on a mole's hill. The inquisitive mole stuck his nose up her... Would you at least permit me to finish it?
I'm dying to know what the rhyme is for molehill.
Miss Coleshill's all right, but the mole's ill. Wendy told me that.
But before you finished and got that extra round of applause, we'll give him a bonus point for that anyway, because it was quite an achievement getting it out in the time. What was your challenge, Wendy?
Well, I was trying to prevent him from saying something. I was trying to bleep it out,
I know
but
you were trying
it's
to,
too late.
You were, with good taste. You were trying to save our. Well, unfortunately, but he's not talking now, so he's obviously pausing. So.
Well, I'll have a.
That was a Wendy's
he finished his rhyme. He got a bonus point for that. Round of applause. And Wendy, you've got 10 seconds. Tell us something about molehills, starting now.
One occasion when we were out in the country, as I've said earlier on, I'm very short-sighted, and I was looking out the window, I thought, good heavens, they've got enormous molehills on their lawn, when one of them got out and hopped about.
So Wendy Richard was then speaking as the whistle went and gained that extra point. She's moved forward, but she's only in second place with Lisa Tarbuck and followed by Paul Merton. And Clement, it's your turn to begin. The subject is parrot fashion. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Parrots have an extremely limited sense of fashion. They wear the same boring colours, beaks that are blue, eyes red.
Hesitation.
Wings yellow.
Yeah. You challenge?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, you're right, yes.
And they hesitate a lot.
So, you have 49 seconds. Paul, tell us something about parrot fashion, starting now.
Well, I think it means that you learn something by rote, perhaps, but don't always understand the true substance you've actually tried to commit to memory. For example, the 7 times table would be very foolish for me to go through because there is an awful lot of repetition, but I do remember sitting in the class, chanting along with everybody else through this dreary rigmarole of these numbers, and I've never really been able to apply mathematics to any other portion of my life. I have an accountant that looks at the money I'm being paid. He lives in Brazil, but I'm sure there's a reason for that. I'm certain.
So when are you challenged?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes. 13 seconds. Tell us something about parrot fashion, Wendy, starting now.
Parrots are some of the most beautiful colours to behold. There's reds, yellows, greens, African greys. They're the best talkers. And then there are parakeets that are also fantastic colours.
So, Wendy, you were speaking as a whistle went and getting an extra point. You're creeping up on Clement Freud, which is, well, it's a very interesting situation, that. And you're just ahead of Lisa Tarbuck and Paul Merton. And, Wendy, it's your turn to begin. The subject is Oxford Street. I'm sure you know a lot about it. Tell us something about it in this game, starting now.
I'm fortunate enough to live in walking distance to Oxford Street. In fact, Selfridges is my corner shop. I'm often to be found in there wandering about or in a... No, I mustn't say that.
Lisa, challenge.
I'm helping her out,
Yes,
but it's
I know.
hesitation.
Yes, it was hesitation. Lisa, 49 seconds. Tell us something about Oxford Street, starting now.
At Christmas time, Oxford Street is a dreadful place to be because you have to be aware of things like pickpockets, throwing pots.
Well, it was deviation, I'm afraid.
Deviation, yes, from English as we understand it. 43 seconds on Oxford Street, starting now.
It's one of the most famous streets in the world, I suppose, full of shoe shops and record stores. There used to be a beautiful cinema in Oxford Street called the Academy, and I used to go there in my early teens to watch a season of Buster Keaton films, I think round about the years 1970 through to about 2 years later. And it was a wonderful opportunity to see these movies from a
Wendy, challenge.
Are we having too many C's?
Yes, I used to go there to see the films,
Oh,
and
yes.
now you were seeing the movies,
Yes.
right. Wendy, well, listen, 21 seconds. More on Oxford Street, please, starting now.
I think Oxford Street has more shoe shops than any other street in London. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to find footwear for children. There's plenty of the high-heeled...
Paul, challenge.
Hesitation.
There was
Yes,
a
there
hesitation,
was.
yes. 10 seconds. Oxford Street with you, Paul, starting now.
When I was a boy, I thought Oxford Circus meant just that you could go along and it'd be tumblers, acrobats, pretty little ponies trotting around, and who knows, a glamorous firing truck.
So Paul Merton was speaking as the whistle went and gained an extra point. He doesn't often trail in this show, but he's now catching up just beside Lisa Tarbuck, one behind Wendy Richard and one or two behind our leaders who's still Clement Freud and Lisa. It is your turn to begin. My favourite beetle. Tell us, even if you haven't got one, tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
My favourite beetle is a relative of the scarab and is the guy called dung beetle. He excretes and collects all this poo into a great big ball and then eats it, and the female comes along and lays its egg in the middle, and then as they gestate from the heat of said manure, they grow up enjoying excrement and then move on and make... I didn't know I knew that.
So, Clement, you challenged first.
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes, after what she said, she hesitated. Clement, you've got 38 seconds. My favourite beetle, starting now.
I, too, am very fond of dung beetles. In South America, there is a beetle which, when it dies, is dried and pounded into cochineal, the colour being given solely because of the blood of the favourite beetle.
Wendy, challenge.
Too many elves.
Yes, there was. Correct. Wendy, 17 seconds. My favourite beetle, starting now.
My favourite Beatle was John Lennon. I had the good fortune to work with the Beatles. In fact, it was my first film. Unfortunately, my role, the scene I was in, ended up on the cutting room floor. I was mortified. But in the days I was with the Beatles...
So Wendy Richard, speaking as the whistle went, is moving forward in second place. She's catching up on our leader, Clement Freud. She's just a bit of ahead of Lisa Tarbuck. Paul Merton is third, and then Lisa Tarbuck. And Paul, your turn to begin. The subject is things you should never do in the back of a cab. We've heard some pretty fine things in the show already, but let's hear some more about the back of a cab, starting now.
Breeding pigs in the back of a cab is an extraordinarily difficult thing because, first of all, you have to keep it quiet from the driver, and he's bound to, after a while, turn around and say, "Excuse me, what are you doing with that syringe?" And you have to point out that actually what you're trying to do is to bring forth little piglets from the poor-sided specimens in front of you. And, of course, he won't have it. He'll say to you, he says, "Listen, you can't use the back of my cab for such animal husbandry," and he'll kick you out. Other things you can't do in the back of a cab is to create a life-size picture of Clement Freud from Matchsticks. It's far too fiddly a thing to do. Other people have tried it, some with a degree of success, but the Whiskers generally try to...
So, Clement, your challenge?
Hesitation?
Yes, I think so there, yes. He was going so fast and rapid, he stumbled, and 21 seconds available. You tell us something about things you should never do in the back of a cab, starting now.
I think the most important thing you should never do in the back of a cab is attempt to speak to the driver. I just wish drivers would do the same regarding...
Wendy,
I
challenge.
was going to say driver, but it was drivers. I do beg your pardon.
No, he said drivers and driver, yes.
Yeah,
My love.
sorry.
Right. 12 seconds, Clement, and wrong challenge. Still with you, things you should never do in the back of a cab, starting now.
I think somersaults are quite difficult to perform, although the arabesque might be possible driving down Oxford Street, which is my favourite.
Clement Freud again was speaking as the whistle went with other points. He's increased his lead at the end of that round, and he also begins the next round because it's your turn, Clement, and the subject is the perfect alibi. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
My lord, I didn't do it. I was performing things in the back of a cab at the time.
Lisa Childs.
Hesitation or finality.
Yes. Waited for his laugh. Right, 53 seconds for you, Lisa. The
good.
perfect alibi, starting now.
Perfect alibi is basically I wasn't there and I can prove where I was. I happened to be sat at home with my wife, for example, would be a good one for Nicholas, perhaps, or anybody who's in fact married.
Paul, challenge.
Not if he'd been murdering his wife.
True.
That would not be a good alibi. I was sitting at home with a wife. That's not a perfect alibi. This isn't, is it, Nicholas?
No, it isn't. It isn't. But we don't. She hadn't established any circumstances under which that perfect alibi would.
Listen, I think he's right.
You've let me off the hook. Thank you very much. Because in just a minute you can interpret the rules any way you like. So 41 seconds. The perfect alibi with you, Paul, starting now.
Well, presumably people have employed perfect alibis. We just don't know how perfect they were.
Sorry.
Clement, challenge.
Sorry.
Right, because you thought it was this for something to come. Right, so Paul gets another point. He was interrupted. He carries on. The perfect alibi. 36 seconds starting now.
I'm sure there are people somewhere in this...
Clement, challenge.
Repetition of people.
Clement, 33 seconds on the perfect alibi starting now. Paul, challenge.
A hesitation.
I think it was, yes. Right. 31 seconds, the perfect alibi, Paul, starting now.
It's supposing that you can get away with the idea that somebody says, "Excuse me, where were you on the night of the 24th? Were you anywhere near Hampstead Heath?" And you can point out quite clearly you were sunning yourself in Rio de Janeiro. If you can prove that, then you have, of course, the perfect alibi. But do we suppose that the perfect alibi is actually covering up a crime, or is it, in fact, that the individual... Is this probably the most boring speech?
Clement, challenge.
In fact.
In fact, you did say
happened in that boring speech a number of times.
So, Clement, you've cleverly gone in with 3 seconds to go on the perfect alibi, starting now.
The thing to do is to talk to the policeman...
And I'm afraid I have to tell you that this is to be the last round. But let me give you the situation as we go into the final round. It's Lisa's Tarbuck's in fourth place, but only just. She's a point or two behind Paul Merton,
Only
who's
just.
equal
I am
with
or I'm
Wendy
not,
Richard.
really. I'm
And
losing.
they're all trailing Clement Freud, who's still in the lead. And Wendy, it's your turn to begin. So will you take the last round, which is courting? Tell us something about courting in this game starting now.
Courting seems to be very rarely done these days. Young couples go rushing into relationships, whereas they should have a bit of courting first. Because it can be quite fun, you know, when you're courting and you get taken out to the theatre and to the cinema and you're bought chocolates and perfume and diamond rings and all sorts of things like that. That is what courting is all about. Also, I feel I am courting disaster any second now. I'm just hoping someone is going to buzz me, Lisa.
So, Lisa, your friend sitting beside you challenged first.
Yeah, it was a certain look in the eye there, and
panic.
A cat's paw under the door, wasn't it? Help me.
Help you. So,
I'm in here. Help me.
No actual challenge, but Wendy's quite prepared to sacrifice the subject. I mean, have you got a challenge?
Oh,
when
we're
the rules
suddenly
are-
being strict now, are we?
I have to be fair. I always am fair throughout. So have you got a challenge when the rules are
Ands.
just...
There was a lot of ands.
Yeah, a lot of ands, right. 27 seconds courting with you, Lisa, starting now.
Courting is the motion that you make whilst playing tennis and moving around the court.
Paul challenge.
No, this is deviation. There's no such term in tennis as courting. You don't. It's just nonsense. It's absolute rubbish. It's balderdash you're playing. Balderdash.
You've created that in the spur of the moment and tried to bluff your way through it.
No, I think she's right, because you have fielding on a cricket field, don't you, and a football field. So you play tennis on a court, so you have courting. Lisa's quite right, because it's where you rush round the court, you see.
So on a football pitch you have pitching.
Yeah, but you do.
Where?
You only have courting...
Round the pitch.
You only have courting when you're playing tennis when two lovers are together and they're not really playing the game seriously.
What are you talking about?
And they stop serving, they go behind the bushes there together, and they do. She created that word. Paul is right. You don't have courting in tennis. And
I'm going to look that up, photocopy it, and send you both that.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
With
And
big fists.
20 seconds, Paul, on courting starting now.
You know, it is strange that now we don't have that magical time when a couple can look in each other's eyes and say, I wonder how much money you're really worth. And you can judge that by the quality of the presents you get. In diamond rings is one thing, but a tractor, that would show...
So Paul Merton was speaking as the whistle went, gained that extra point, and when others in the round, he has leapt forward. But I'll give you the final situation. Lisa Tarbuck finished in a magnificent fourth place. She was... gave her usual good value with great charm and panache. Wendy Richard, who always gives good value... You finished in a very strong third place. Paul Merton, who usually does magnificently, did very well because he's in a beautiful second place. But that's all right, that's enough. And out in the lead, and a very strong lead, was Clement Freud. Please say, Clement, you're the winner this week. It only remains for me to say thank you to these four delightful players of the game, Paul Merton, Lisa Tarbuck, Wendy Richard and Clement Freud. I also thank Janet Staplehurst, who has helped me keep the score. Jane's blown her whistle so delicately. And we also thank our producer-director, Claire Jones. We're indebted to Ian Messiter, who created the game, and we're very grateful to this lovely, warm, spontaneous audience here in the Drill Hall in the centre of London, who have cheered us on our way magnificently. Thank you from me, Nicholas Parsons, from our panel and from the audience as well. Thank you. Goodbye, and tune in the next time we play Just a Minute. Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners in this country and, of course, throughout the world. And also to welcome to the show 4 exciting, talented players who are going to display their verbal wit and ingenuity, their creative, humorous talent as they try and speak on a subject that I give them, and as they do that without hesitation, repetition, or deviation. And those 4 people are, sitting on my right, Bill Bailey and Tony Hawkes, and sitting on my left, Linda Smith and Chris Neill. Please welcome all 4 of them. Beside me sits Claire Bartlett, who's going to help me keep the score, and she'll blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the Maltings Concert Hall, which is at Snape, near Saxmundham, and not far from Aldborough, and all of those lovely towns in the great, lovely county of Suffolk. And in front of us we have a real Suffolk audience. As we start the show with Linda Smith. Linda, the subject is What I Dreamt About Last Night. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
What I dreamt about last night is a very unfortunate opening to a sentence, I think. If someone says to me, would you like to hear what I dreamt about last night? I think, no, you're quite boring conscious.
Tony challenged.
Repetition of think.
Yes.
Did I? Oh.
50 seconds, Tony. You got in with a correct challenge, so you get a point for that, and you take over the subject of What I Dreamt About Last Night, starting now.
Bizarrely, what I dreamt about last night was that I was on Just a Minute talking on the subject What I Dreamt About Last Night, which makes this particular period of time a bit weird for me. However, I've...
Bill Bailey challenged.
Hesitate. Deviation.
I'd stick to the first one if I were you. Right. He did hesitate,
yeah.
Bill. So you have a correct challenge, and you have the subject of What I Dreamt About Last Night. You get a point for your correct challenge, of course, and you have 35 seconds available starting now.
What I dreamt about last night was that I entered a pub, a tiny dwelling, very, very small.
That's the natural speech pattern, isn't it? It's very small. It's very, very small. Right, Chris, you challenge first.
Repetition of very.
Repetition,
yeah,
yes.
right.
So, Chris, we're going to hear from you on this subject, and there are 28 seconds available. What I Dreamt About Last Night, starting now.
I think I may have been in Tony's dream, because I was dreaming about being on Just a Minute last night. In fact, it was taking place on Shaftesbury Avenue in London, not at this very lovely place in... Oh, I've said place. Oh, I've done it again! I'm so honest.
18 seconds. Another point to you, Linda. What I Dreamt About Last Night, starting now.
What I dreamt about last night was horrifying. Nicholas Parsons, crazed with power, decided to take over all the quiz shows on the radio. First of all, he marched on, I'm sorry, I haven't a clue, Humphrey Littleton is now under house arrest. Then he moved in on the news.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Linda Smith. On the end of that round, she has 2 points, and all the rest have only 1, but it's early days. Bill Bailey, will you take the next round? The subject is opera, something which we associate with this... I don't know why you're laughing. It's quite a natural thing to say in this part of the world, isn't it? Right. Tell us something about opera, Bill. 60 seconds, starting now.
To many people, opera is the perfect synthesis of music, drama, words, and visual spectacle. For others, the Gary Newman concert offers exactly the same thing.
Chris challenged.
Hesitation.
There was a hesitation, yes. It was
I do apologise.
You didn't want it, right. I thought what you said was very apt and to the point. But, Bill, Chris, you got in with 49 seconds available to tell us something about opera, starting now.
No wonder we've been given this subject in this part of Suffolk, because, of course, here Benjamin Britten and Peter Pears lived. Don't laugh, it's not funny. Anyway, the composer that I alluded to wrote in this very...
In this very what?
I tried to say part, but then I knew that I'd said it before, but I didn't want to do that thing that I always do where I go, I've said it before.
No,
I tried to avoid doing it.
So
and I was going to teach these people so much about Benjamin Britten and Peter.
I think they probably know a bit about him anyway.
Oh, nothing.
Linda. You challenged infinitesimally ahead of Tony, and what was your challenge?
Hesitation.
Hesitation, yes. Opera is with you, Linda, and there are 35 seconds available starting now.
The most wonderful thing about the composer that Chris has just mentioned is that in Aldborough's award-winning chip shop, you can get a Billy Budd supper in commemoration of that very man. It is a marvellous thing, a rather gloomy piece of haddock surrounded by chips carved to resemble...
Bill challenge.
Chips.
Yeah, fish and chip shop. No, you said no.
But then you'd want more
no,
than...
she said chip, fish and chip. No, she wasn't, it was
No,
plural.
I said chip shop and then chips.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was singular and plural.
But
It's a tough game.
chips shop.
No, she said chip shop. She said a chip
You don't just
shop.
get one chip with fish, do you?
No, she talked about a chip shop. And then she said fish and chips.
Chips shop.
Yeah. So, opera's still with you, Linda, and there are 18 seconds available starting now.
But apart from the person I alluded to before, opera generally...
Chris challenge.
A repetition of alluded.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
As you said, he had alluded to Benjamin Britten
no,
before.
right.
So alluded can come up again. 15 seconds. He's back with you. Now you said you want to tell them something about it.
I think they may begin to learn.
Yes. Chris, opera, 15 seconds starting now.
Peter Grime.
Tony challenge.
Repetition of Peter.
You see,
Because you said
that's
Peter
why I
Pierce
went
before.
with Billy Budd.
Yes.
Oh, no.
I know.
And what I had to say was just so interesting.
I know. I was so keen to tell them all about it. But Tony, a correct challenge, so we're playing just a minute now. We're not playing opera buffing. 14 seconds, opera with you, starting now.
In opera, sometimes I think they sing too loud. They hit those top...
Bill challenge.
Repetition of they?
There, yes. Tough challenge, Bill, but correct.
I'm trying to get everything I get.
I say this, Bill, this is the only second time you played the game, but you have learned fast.
God bless you.
And you now have 9 seconds to tell us something about opera starting now.
Opera is derived from an old Latin phrase meaning, get on with it!
Bill, having said get on with it, you didn't get on with it.
I tried to think what the next phrase was.
I know, right. Having got your laugh, you sort of sat back, and Chris got in with a challenge with 4 seconds to go. What was your challenge, Chris?
Hesitation.
Yes, it was. Yes, 4 seconds. Tell us something about opera starting now.
The turn of the screw follows the theme of many of that man's operas. Basically...
Chris Neill speaking as a whistle-wind, getting that extra point. And he's now in the lead, just ahead of Linda Smith, and he's 3 ahead of Bill Bailey and Tony Hawkes. And Tony, it's your turn to begin. The subject is how to choose from the wine list. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
Choosing from the wine list seems to be a strangely important part of the ritual of courting. The man will hold the wine list and try to demonstrate enormous knowledge about different wines. If he fails to do so, he will have no sex whatsoever with that lady later in the evening, which is why I have studied for hours, and I know a great deal about many different drinks of white and red colour. Also, rosé, if I really want to impress, but that's another story, and I haven't got time to tell it now. I've only got a minute. Anyway, I was with a group of people who were tasting this wine, and...
Yeah, Bill, you're challenged.
Yes, tasting swine.
Well, I was going to go on and explain why they were doing that.
Sorry, maybe that was an incorrect challenge. They were tasting different sorts of pig.
We'll call that in
pig tasting.
Hesitation.
I like a wild boar of an evening.
Well, they were out with me, so they were all right.
So, Bill, a correct challenge.
Yeah.
And you have how to choose from the wine list. 19 seconds available, starting now.
How to Choose from the Wine List is probably one of the most best-selling books ever written by me.
Linda challenged.
I thought this was one of the most best-selling books.
Yes, it was. That's right. One of the most best-selling books.
One of the most best-selling books?
Yes.
It sells even more than some of the others.
Yeah, it was a slight deviation from grammar as we understand it, but on the other hand, one has to keep going under pressure in just a minute, and he's only played the game once before. I think I'd be very mean if I took it away from him. So, Bill, another point.
Oh,
I realise
Bill's carrying on because he's clearly got a lot to say on this subject.
Oh, yes.
Just the way you set off there, I'm really anticipating this.
Bill, please don't bang the table because it comes over very badly on radio. When we get letters, what
it's
was
like going on a school trip, this show.
No. It's even worse when you bang the microphone like that. See, when you're on television, when you're on television in the buzzcocks, they can see you banging the table. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
in radio, they get a bit confused. They think something more sinister is going on.
He's got to say. Come on, let's get
I want to know what he's going to say. Yes. You've got another 12 seconds to tell us how to choose from the wine list, starting now.
No, we there.
Chris, why have you challenged?
Well, is that deviation?
No.
Well, no, that... no.
That's what... That's how he chooses from the wine list. I took it that he was making up his mind. Yeah, I think I'd be mean if I took it away from your game. Now, 11 seconds. How to choose from the wine list, Bill, starting now.
Are we there yet? I'm hungry. I want to go to the toilet. These are examples of wines.
Well, this is deviation from how to choose from the wine list.
Yes.
No.
That was a list of wines.
A list of wines. No,
I
there yet. He thinks so.
Right, so you've interpreted the wine in a different way, which is very clever, and the audience enjoyed it. And there are 7 seconds.
That sounds so patronising. That's very clever, and the audience enjoyed it.
Bill, I could never patronise you. You're far too talented.
God
you
bless
know
you.
that.
God bless you.
If it sounds like that, it is...
He just did it then.
He did it. I would never patronise. I would never talk down to you, Bill.
I only say these things to give you ammunition to come back with your fertile, humorous mind.
Come on. He's got more to say on the wine list. Come on.
How long have I got?
And you've got 7 seconds on how to
7
choose.
seconds. That could be a lifetime. Right, so.
Starting now.
Oh, haven't we got any crisps or pop? I really want to go. These are examples of wines that could be attributed to a teenager's wine list.
A very inventive way to use wine list, and that's not supposed to be patronising. And Bill, with all the other points you've got in there round his men, you've leapt forward. You're in a strong lead. You're 3 ahead of Linda Smith, 4 of Chris Neill, and 5 of Tony Hawkes. And Linda, your turn to begin. The subject, the North Sea, which isn't very far from here. And you have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
The North Sea exists largely to remind us how lucky we are to be land mammals. If you've ever seen people trying to swim in the North Sea, you'll understand what I mean. You see poor little children come...
Tony, challenge.
Repetition of sea.
No, seen and see.
I know she was seeing C, S-E-E, but it's still the same sound. You know,
Fair enough.
Not
Okay,
to words,
I
but sound.
I withdraw my
sound.
challenge.
Yes, right. And Linda, another point to you.
Well done, Linda.
48 seconds starting now.
Regardless of all this bickering, my point is it's bloody freezing in there. You cannot swim in that substance because you see people coming out there shivering like mad. Their teeth are chattering. Their limbs are lavender. They poor little things have got to be resuscitated by...
Chris, challenge.
Is it a repetition of there?
Well, yes, there was a
at the
lot
very least.
Their limbs and there's something else.
Yes, there was too many theirs, right.
Swim as well. I said that twice. Nobody noticed. No. I don't know why I bother sometimes.
Chris, a correct challenge. The North Sea's with you. 32 seconds starting now.
There is a player of this game, just a minute, Clement Freud, who told me once that he likes to spend New Year's Day swimming in the sea off Walberswick in the nude. Nice. Anyway...
Tony, you challenged.
Should we all come up next New Year's Day? No, I think he sort of stopped because the thought of it made him unable to carry on.
I think he got such a good laugh, he thought he'd retire on it. But it was a definite hesitation. So, Tony, you have 18 seconds. Tell us something about the North Sea, starting now.
If there's a North Sea, I think there ought to be an East Sea, or a West Sea, or a South Sea. But there isn't.
Linda challenge.
There is a South Sea. It's lovely.
It's true.
It's not a sea, but it's just near Portsmouth. It's a town.
It's lovely.
But within the rules of just a minute, it's a correct challenge. So, Linda, 10 seconds. Tell us more about the North Sea, starting now.
What a wonderful opportunity to tell you all more about the North Sea. I believe I may have covered its salient feature, i.e. a slight deficiency in the temperature department.
Linda Smith was then speaking as the whistle went. Got that extra point, and with others in the round, she has leapt forward. She's now equal Bill Bailey in the lead, and they're 3 points ahead of Chris Neill, and then comes Tony Hawks. And Bill, your turn to begin again. The subject, how to change your identity. Can you tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now?
How to change your identity sounds like an autobiography of Gary Glitter. It would be something you'd have to do if you were trying to escape your former life. For example, wear a massive wig all of your existence, and then when things go a bit pear-shaped, take it off.
Linda challenged.
To existence. It was your former existence and then existence.
Was it?
I think it was.
Can't say I heard that.
No.
I didn't hear that either.
Yes, but you didn't hear me say swim twice, did you?
No, I did, but I didn't know which one of your faults to pick up on.
Linda, 43 seconds. How to change your identity, starting now.
How to change your identity is quite easy. You come and live in an East Anglian village, somewhere like Swaffham or Swarthega or one of those totally made-up places, and you wouldn't really have to change your identity because no one will bother to try and find you because it's such a bloody long way.
Tony challenged.
But it's not a long way if you live in Aldborough.
Oh, it is.
No, it's all relative, you know. Yeah. You're saying it's a long way. That's a very selfish, London-centric thing to say.
You didn't...
But if you lived in Aldborough, you probably wouldn't talk to people who lived here, so you wouldn't need to change your identity.
Nobody lives here. This is a theatre.
And listen... there are 25 seconds available for you, Tony, on how to change your identity starting now.
I think a good way of changing your identity is to buy one of those little plastic clip-on moustaches that they sell in joke shops, and then adopt a French accent and pretend to be Hercule Poirot. Hours of fun to be had there, and on a boring, rainy Sunday in Aldborough, that's how you could pass your time. Of course, you could travel to London.
Chris challenge.
A repetition of course.
There was. He did say of course before. So, Tony, Chris, correct challenge. And you have 4 seconds to tell us something about how to change your identity starting now.
I am a master of disguise.
The end of that round, 1 point separates them all. Linda Smith's in the lead, 1 point behind is Bill Bailey, then Chris Neill, and then Tony Hawks. And Chris, your turn to begin. The subject is good manners. Tell us something about good manners in this game, starting now.
When in Suffolk, I believe it to be good manners not to make jokes about inbreeding. It seems rather silly in this county when there are so many lovely things to point out. Also seems particularly ridiculous when you realise that Norfolk is only next door. It is also good manners... Oh, probably...
You must admit that people in East Anglia can laugh against themselves, can't they?
They certainly can.
They're lovely,
and I love
lovely
them
people.
all.
Yes. Bill, you challenge first.
What?
Yes, you challenge.
Did I?
Yes. He came to a halt. Good manners, you challenge first, Bill. 42 seconds, starting now.
I absolutely love good manners. There's nothing more horrible than somebody on a train, for example, with a Walkman that is too loud and someone in the audience coughing very, very loud. Down.
Tony, you challenge.
Well, he got tripped up by the old very, very again.
Yes. They probably put me up. I was in the middle of the... Sorry, I banged the table.
I won't draw your attention, otherwise you'll say I'm patronising again.
I do apologise.
Right, that's right, don't apologise. Right, 28 seconds, Tony, with you. Good manners starting now.
It's not considered good manners to fart before the Queen. You have to let her do it first, so I'm told. Now, good manners is something that we're losing a little bit in this country. The British, we used to enjoy such a reputation around the world, but as Bill said, you do see some things that I don't think people should get away with. Mobile phones, too loud, on trains. This guy on one recently was making so many calls, it was just like being in his office. I wouldn't have minded, but he had me doing photocopying.
So Tony Hawk's got points in that round. M1 for speaking as the whistle went, and he's leapt forward. He's now trailing a little, but not so much as he was. Just behind Chris Neill, and a point or two behind our leaders, Linda Smith and Bill Bailey. And Linda, your turn to begin. The subject, shop assistants. Tell us something about them in this game, starting now.
Shop assistants come in all types, particularly ones I dislike are those snooty ones in posh department stores.
Tony, challenge.
Repetition of ones.
The ones, yes, they come in, yes.
Ones.
Well done, Tony. You've got 53 seconds. Tell us something about shop assistants, starting now.
I'm irritated by the shop assistants in white goods stores who tell you how brilliant the product is, sell it to you, and then try and sell you insurance.
Chris, challenge.
It's obviously struck a chord with them. As a repetition of sell.
That's right. You sell it to and then sell insurance. 44 seconds with you, Chris. Shop assistants starting now.
I must come to their defence. My mother is a shop assistant. She works in Boots in Teddington, which is a very dull suburb of London. She's on her feet all day, and I worry about the bunions and the varicose veins that it could ensue from this, and she don't get paid much. Honestly, you should see...
Yes, Linda, what's your challenge?
I didn't mean your mum.
So what's your question? Why have you challenged?
Oh, there was something. What was it?
I just saw hesitate in a stumbling
Yes, thank you, Chris. He hesitated.
I didn't actually hear him hesitate.
No, I didn't hesitate.
You didn't? No, I did actually hesitate.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes. So, Chris, you've got another point, and you've got 31 seconds. Still with you on shop assistants, starting now.
When I was about 18, I worked in the London store Liberty for 2 whole days.
Tony, challenge.
Repetition of London.
Yes, you thought about London, yes.
Dull suburb.
It's a fascinating place.
I know. Except that Teddington was not a very nice part of London. So 27 seconds available for you, Tony, on shop assistants, starting now.
You feel like taking them by the throat and saying, if it's so useless, why did you make me buy it in the first place?
Linda, challenged.
I think you said bye before.
Yes, you did say bye when you were talking before. Right. 18 seconds. Linda, shop assistants, starting now.
Shop assistants with a superior attitude are quite annoying. You ask them, for example, oh, where are the gloves, please? And they look at you as if you've just asked Princess Michael of Kent to clean a toilet. I don't like that when I go into a shop. Some other shop assistants that annoy me are those very, very young.
Tony, yes, you were first in there.
Repetition of annoy, actually, before.
Yes, annoy as well, but the very, very came later. But you can't have 2 points, only one. And you've got only 1 second to go on shop assistants, starting now.
When I was on...
Oh, Bill. Yes, Bill.
Repetition of when? Worth a try, wasn't it?
That's right, yes, you did say it before.
Yeah?
Right. So you've got in there half a second on shop assistant starting now.
Well,
right, we're moving into the final round, I'm sad to say.
Oh, just pretending.
Linda, you are still in the lead as we go into the final round. You're 3 points ahead of Bill Bailey, and Tony Hawks are equal in second place, and 4 points ahead of Chris Neill. It's a very close contest, if you're interested in contests. And whose turn is it to begin?
Is there a prize?
Yes. You get to take me out to dinner afterwards.
Why was I trying so hard? As well,
Right, Bill, our second-time player of the game. It's your turn to begin, so you're going to take the last round, or start the last round, and the subject is hippies. Tell us something about hippies in this game, starting now.
Hippies are people that are unfairly stereotyped as having long hair, beards, and a relaxed attitude to personal hygiene. This is absolutely not true. Also, some hippies have specially designed hands like trowels that they can dig under the ground and form tunnels under the floor. Some hippies have...
Tony, challenge.
Repetition of under.
There were two unders. Under the ground, yes. Under, yes, there were. I should explain to our listeners, because the early laugh was because Bill actually has long hair and a beard. This is radio, you see. I have to explain these things, Bill.
Yes.
The audience laughed because they could see you. They're using their eyes.
Oh, sorry, did it...
I hope that came over. He scratched his beard and then threw his hair all over the microphone. Tony, you have a correct challenge, and you have 43 seconds. Tell us something about hippies starting now.
It's just occurred to me that I'm actually wearing a shirt that might be worn by hippies. But this being radio, Nicholas will have to describe that at the end of this round, which is something we'll all be looking forward to enormously. I was a hippie in the late 70s, which was a little bit on the...
Bill, you challenged.
Yes,
hesitation. Yes, I quite agree with you, Bill. Absolutely. 23 seconds. Let's hear more from you on hippies starting now.
Hippies will walk through fire to get to a face painting tent. They will also take great lengths to get to a juggling workshop, a stilt walking performance.
Linda challenged.
A bit of hesitation.
There was some hesitation, yes. All right. Linda, you have another point. You have 12 seconds. Hippies is with you now, starting now.
Hippies are usually gentle souls, but they can go bad, like Cat Stevens, for example, who left his hippie ways of kindness and musical settings to old hymns and started persecuting the...
Well, as I said a short while ago, this was to be the last round. I'm afraid it is, and I'll give you the final situation. Chris Neill came only just in fourth place. He was 1 or 2 points behind our equal second place, Bill Bailey and Tony Hawks. But 4 points ahead of them was Linda Smith. So we say, Linda, you are our winner this week. It only remains for me to say thank you to our 4 fine players of the game, Linda Smith, Chris Neill, Tony Hawks and Bill Bailey. I also thank Claire Bartlett, who helped me keep the score, and she's blown her whistle so delicately. And we are grateful to our producer, Claire Jones, who tries to keep us in order. And we are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this particular game. And we're very grateful to this lovely Suffolk audience here, who have cheered us on our way with great aplomb and panache. From our audience, from me, Nicholas Parsons, from our team, goodbye. Thank you for tuning in. Be with us the next time we play Just a Minute.
And that, of course, will be the same time next week, the last of the series, when Nicholas is joined by Paul Merton, Tony Hawks, Clement Freud and Charles Collingwood, the love him or loathe him Brian Aldridge of Archer's fame.
Welcome to Just a Minute. Thank you. Hello, my name is Nicholas Parsons, and as the minute waltz fades away, once more it is my pleasure to welcome our many listeners, not only in this country in Great Britain, but also throughout the world. But also to welcome to the show this week 4 talented, skilled, and highly delightful players of the game. With great pleasure, we welcome back that comic, inventive mind, the man who's contributed so much to Just a Minute whenever he's played the game, that is Paul Merton. And sitting beside him, we have a man who's played the game more often than any of us. Right from the very beginning, he was in the show, and his clever and erudite contributions have also helped to keep the show running for many years, and that is Clement Freud. And on my left, we have another comic icon who's also contributed so much whenever he's appeared on the show, and that is Tony Hawks. And beside him, we have someone sitting who's only played the game once before, and he obviously contributed so much that we've asked him back again, and that is Charles Collingwood. Now, will you please welcome all 4 of them? Beside me sits Claire Bartlett, And she's going to help me keep the score, and she will blow a whistle when the 60 seconds are up. And this particular edition of Just a Minute is coming from the delightful and magnificent Wimbledon Theatre in the heart of Wimbledon, the jewel and the crown of southern London. And there's 4 people who recognise the area, but they're obviously going to enjoy themselves as we begin playing the game this week and starting the show with Paul Merton. Oh, Paul, a very apt subject for Wimbledon, the Wombles. Tell us something about the Wombles in this game, starting now.
As Shakespeare once wrote, underground, overground, wombling free, the Wombles of Wimbledon common are we, making good use of the things that we find, the objects that ordinary people leave behind. It was a popular television show in the 1970s. The original books were written by Elizabeth Beresford, and Bernard Cribbins supplied the narration once it was broadcast on the television in the corner of my room. I remember liking it very much. I was of an age when I believed in soft, furry creatures living underground.
Yes, so, Tony, you challenged.
Yes, repetition of underground.
Underground, yes, you can't go underground too often if you're talking about the Wombles. Right there. Tony, you have a correct challenge, so you get a point for that. Have 16 seconds to continue. No, take over the subject of the Wombles starting now.
I don't think it was William Shakespeare that wrote those words. I believe it was Mike Batt. Underground, overground, wombling free. The Wombles of Wimbledon common are we. Were lyrics composed by that.
In this game, whoever is speaking when the whistle goes gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Tony Hawks, so Tony's in the lead at the end of the first round. Clement Freud, will you take the next round? The subject is spring. Tell us something about spring in Just a Minute, starting now.
Spring occurs in the 3rd, 4th and 5th months of the year, known as March, April, May, and a bit of it in June, although after that we come to summer. Springs are also metallic, bouncy things, such as were made by my parliamentary colleague Cyril Smith, a failed anorexic who worked in Rochdale and had a tremendous factory employing many people and using fine liberal principles by which to make sure that they were paid according to the work they did, and extra money if they...
Oh, they were hanging on every word there, egging you on. But, Tony, you were the one who challenged first.
Yeah, I think there was a hesitation.
It was a hesitation, yes. So, Tony, another point to you for correct challenge. 18 seconds available. Tell us something about spring.
You make me feel like spring has sprung. A wonderful lyric, not by Mike Batt, but in that Frank Sinatra song. Now, spring is nearly upon us, and when it is, I shall be
Clement Freud challenge.
When's this show going out?
Good point. Yeah, good point.
It will be going out sometime in March, and the first day of spring is the 21st of March.
But does this programme go to Australia?
It's going to be very confusing, eh? I think, technically, Clement, he wasn't deviating from the subject. So I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to you, Tony. Incorrect challenge. Another point to you. 7 seconds. Spring starting now.
I shall be gambling around the fields like the lambs until I'm arrested, because that's...
Oh, full challenge.
Well, I don't agree with gambling. And I think to sort of drag animals into it is the height of cruelty. The poor things don't really understand poker, and they use the cloth off their back, don't they?
So what is your challenge within the rules of Just a Minute?
As you know full well, I haven't got one, Nicholas.
Well, all right. As the audience enjoyed your contribution, we give you a bonus point. And I think perhaps I should have given one to Clement, too, because they enjoyed it as well. So Clement gets one for his interruption. So that's only fair. I've redressed the balance now. Paul, you get a point for your contribution.
Charles would like one as well.
I'm sure Charles will get one. Well, Charles will get one for being quiet, I don't know.
I've decided it might be an interesting thing if I don't say anything for half an hour. Would be quite a novel way of playing this game, wouldn't it? It'll be coming to me in a minute.
Yes, you're happy.
And I'm being polite. I'm a bit of a new boy.
And you're enjoying it, aren't you?
I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it.
Yes.
And he's terribly good, Tony, sitting next to me. He's
Yes,
frightfully good.
If
Anyway,
you say
sorry to
nothing for
hold
the
you up.
whole show, we might get you for repetition of nothing.
Absolutely. Keep going. Come on.
Okay.
But on that last challenge, or interruption as it was, Tony, you get a point because
Oh, great
it was
news.
an interruption and not a challenge. And you have 1 second to go on spring, starting now.
Lord Lucan.
So Tony Hawkes again speaking as the whistle went, and with other points in the round, he's increased his lead. And Charles, with you, Charles Collingwood, we'd like you to take the next round. The subject, I wonder why they've chosen this one for you, baddies. Will you tell us something about this? Oh, you're winding them up nicely, Charles. Wait for the now, Charles, and that's when you go.
Is that what I do?
That's right,
Okay.
yes. And you have 60 seconds, as usual, starting now.
Baddies is a loose term that actors are given when they are playing parts of a rather dubious nature on the theatre or the radio. For my part, I have never had the opportunity to play a baddie, as I, for over 28 years, and I'm sure the audience can agree with me here, have been playing the part of a goody two-shoes, Brian Aldridge, in The Archers. And I can hear them agreeing with every word I say. And I love you, audience, for just being as generous as you are in the fact that you agree with me that Aldridge is not a baddie, but a very nice person. There are actors who get very bitter about playing the other opposite of...
Charles,
I hesitated so badly I couldn't bear to let it go on. Do I get a point for hesitation? Sorry.
Charles, you've actually challenged yourself. So I have to ask you, what was the challenge?
Hesitation.
And it's a correct challenge.
Thank you.
So you have got a lot of points already, Charles. So you got one for challenging yourself and getting a point for that. And you've still got the subject, but I have had a little message from the engineer in the van. Could you speak a little less close to the microphone, please?
Oh.
You were getting carried away with enthusiasm and actually licking the...
Such has been my role in The Archers for a number of months.
I know. All that licking came in, and... But we didn't see much of it. I didn't hear much of it, actually, either. I just got the feel. So you have the subject still of baddies. You've been going for 49 seconds, and you have 11 seconds left, starting now.
Baddies?
And you've been challenged.
Slight hesitation.
A definite hesitation. And I have to tell you, they were very generous before. They did let the repetition of Aldridge go by.
Well, I think Aldridge does repeat himself rather a lot.
And I have to mention that because people often write to me and say, why didn't you pull him up for that? It's not my responsibility.
No, so thank you. They just make me look stupid, really.
Must be nice for you to get the letters, though, mustn't it?
I know. And I think it's very kind of you to write them as well.
I don't do the threatening ones, that's Paul.
Paul. Tony, you don't write him letters as well, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Nicholas, I am Lee Wong. Please, esteemed gentlemen, send me your photograph. That's me.
Really? I wondered why it was so badly written. There we are there. Well, Paul, it was a correct challenge. You have 10 seconds on baddies starting now.
Perhaps one of the greatest baddies that ever lived was Geoffrey Archer, a fictional character who was born in the late 20th century. He later became one of the Lord Mayors of London. What a fantastic...
So Paul Merton speaking to Whistle Wayne getting an extra point, and he's moved forward. He's just behind Tony Hawkes, and Clement Freud and Charles Collingwood are both equal in third place. And Tony, your turn to begin. The subject now is punctuality. Tell us something about that subject in this game, starting now.
It's very important that you display punctuality when you begin talking in just a minute. The subject arrives at your doorstep from Mr. Nicholas Parsons. You must begin straight away. If you hesitate, you'll finish.
Paul challenge.
Well, it doesn't arrive at your doorstep.
No.
Well, we're not broadcasting from each one's individual house. So that's deviation.
Absolutely, because he gets it straight from me here, and that's not exactly his doorstep.
Well, doorstep. You don't live here, do you?
Yeah.
No, listen, I promise not to speak metaphorically again, ever. It's going to get me into that kind of trouble.
Tony, a good way to get out of it, but quite frankly, as a metaphor for that table you're sitting behind being your doorstep,
Yeah, it wasn't a good
bit
metaphor.
far-fetched.
It was a poor quality metaphor, granted.
Right. So, Paul, I agree with the challenge. You have another point. You have punctuality. You have 40 seconds starting now.
Well, sometimes it's better to be more than punctual, to get somewhere early. That way you can control the status in a room. If you think that the biggest, most important chair is the one that's by a window, make sure you're sitting there when everybody else comes in, and therefore they have to defer.
Tony, challenge.
I think there's a repetition of sure. You have to be sure you get there before...
No.
No, it was a well tried, Tony. No, you have 27 seconds. Punctuality is still with you, and 27 seconds, Paul, starting now.
Some people say that the art of punctuality is something that you can learn or perhaps have instilled in you by sheer disciplinarian methods. For example, if you turn up at a meeting, you're 5 minutes late, you lose a finger. And therefore, you've only got another 9 opportunities to be not on time.
Clement, your challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, there wasn't definite...
There was, yes.
Definite.
And I did say sure before. I don't want you to get the letters, Nicholas.
So what we do then is we give Tony a bonus point because that was a correct challenge you had, yes.
So honesty is not the best policy.
I knew that. I was just wondering how long before you owned up to it. And you were very punctual in doing so. And Clement, you have 10 seconds on punctuality starting now.
I'm very fond of words that contain U, C, and T. Possibly my favourite 3 letters. Punctuality, punctilious, functional.
I think the route he was following, he was saved by the whistle, but... He got a point for speaking as a whistle when, so Clement, you're now in a strong third place, and Charles is just behind you, and Clement, your turn to begin, and the subject is hustings. I think it's something you can talk about. Tell us about it in this game, starting now.
Hustings were originally the booths in which people voted, and then became the platforms from which they spoke. I have on many occasions orated...
Charles, your challenge.
Hesitation.
I think there was a hesitation.
That's very
Charles.
good of you. Right.
Yes. No, it's not. It was accurate.
I can't wait to speak on hustings.
When you've got the subject, got 50 seconds to speak on it, and you start now.
I feel I could have made an extremely good MP. Collingwood, for your local representative, I hear myself cry. And the people thinking I'm a sincere, giving, true man who could represent them in the way that they should be represented.
Yeah, but you challenged.
He fluffed.
You're very cruel.
No, but yes, actually, what? You realised you hesitated and you fluffed.
I fluffed, frankly. Yes.
You bluffed and you
I'll
fluffed, and we call that hesitation. Clement, you have 33 seconds. Tell us something more about hustings starting now.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Isle of Wight, I used to shout at the...
Charles Collingwood challenge.
He can't have said that. He represented Norfolk.
I know.
Well, somewhere up there.
It was Ely.
Well, Ely's not going to be the Isle of Wight, is it?
No, but he still could have said it.
He's terribly lost if he's standing in Newport, Isle of Wight, trying to be a Liberal MP.
The point is, this is my difficulty in this game in making a judgment. He can still say that and realise he's made a mistake, or he could have said it's a joke, he could have said it's a bluff. I mean, there's no reason why he couldn't have got up in his constituency of Ely and said, people of the Isle of Wight.
People of the Isle of Wight, how do I get to Norfolk?
You are quite right.
To be fair within the rules of just a minute, I don't think he was deviating, so you still have 27 seconds on hustings, Clement, starting now.
My constituency was in Cambridgeshire, but I spoke on hustings in Devon, Cornwall, Dorset, Wiltshire, Hampshire, Suffolk, Norfolk, Essex, Yorkshire, Lancashire, Durham, Northumberland, Cumberland, and all over Scotland.
Paul has challenged you.
He never came to Morden.
Right, Paul, we love the interruption. We get another bonus point for you. Clement was interrupted, so he gets a point, and he still has 11 seconds on hustings, starting now.
Hampstead, Highgate, Kentish Town, Camden, Holloway, Islington.
Charles challenge.
Well, he's just a local councillor now. And very desperate, too. Well, there's a desperation to be loved going to all these places.
Absolutely.
But you could speak on the hustings at local council elections,
Yes,
can't
but you know he didn't go to all those
I
places.
know he didn't go.
He's a very distinguished elderly gentleman, but even his life hasn't given him time to be there.
Well,
all those places.
I don't believe he did go to all those places, but I can't prove it, so what do we do in
I
just a
see,
minute?
so we just lie. I mean, I'm a new boy at this game. I just lie my way through the whole evening.
If you can, yes.
Well, there we are. That's a new thing for me.
So,
and I love you too, ladies and gentlemen.
While I agree with your thoughts, I must say, within the rules of just a minute, he wasn't actually deviating. So, Clement, you've got 4 seconds still on hustings, starting now.
Politicians of all parties stand on hustings and address...
And so Clement Freud has now leapt forward with what he contributed in that round, as well as speaking as the whistle went, and he's now equal with Paul Merton in the lead. They're just ahead of Tony Hawks. Charles Collingwood is trailing, but I think for your interruption, Charles, you should have a bonus point, so Charles has got one more.
I would think so, too.
Right. Charles, it's your turn to begin.
Right.
Not too close to the microphone, please. No. And the subject is flat stomachs. Right. So you have 60 seconds as usual, starting now.
How I long to have my flat stomach back. That six-pack that for so many years excited me in the shower in the morning. Let alone my wife of 27 years.
Paul, challenge.
Is this Charles embracing the concept of lying?
On what area do you think he's lying about?
Well, I don't know. If this six-pack that he claims he had, that he used to admire himself in the shower, I don't... Did you really?
Used to. Not anymore. I'm getting to this bit. Getting to the sad bit now.
All right, OK. Well, let me get to the sad bit, then.
Right. So you were interrupted. You get a point for that. You have 51 seconds. Flat stomachs, Charles, starting now.
Sadly, the older I get, more often I look down, the less I can see beyond my stomach.
Clement Freud, challenge.
Repetition.
Of what?
Stomach.
Of stomach. Oh.
Flat stomachs.
No, stomachs is plural. He's been very artful and clever.
Honestly.
I know it's
Richmond, Haringey, Ealing,
It's a tough bit. The subject is flat stomachs.
How sad
and as
can
you
you
know,
be?
Charles, you can repeat the words on the thing, but you were saying stomach in the singular.
Oh.
Well,
Never mind. I want to hear about his flat stomach.
You can bet your life he had it in Lincolnshire, Yorkshire...
Right, so Clement, you have the subject and a point, of course. 44 seconds, flat stomachs, starting now.
If you have a stomach of my size, that could well be called stomachs, because there is enough of it, 44, 6, 8 inches in centimetres.
Charles Collingwood.
He was hesitating, and he also said stomachs, and I said stomachs.
I know,
he can't repeat stomachs
No,
again.
he reparted off by saying, if you have a stomach, and mine could be called stomachs.
Charles, calm down. You don't win a car if you win.
Well, I'll go quiet again.
Go
then.
quiet. I don't bother.
I did think he was hesitating.
No, he didn't.
Prizes get
I'm
better.
sorry, Nicholas.
He was getting close, teetering on it, but didn't achieve it.
Right.
32 seconds, still with you, Clement, on flat stomachs, starting now.
Flat stomachs are enormously helpful if you want to go in for athletics, if you wish to participate in the Olympic Games, in which nearly every discipline requires a svelte...
Tony challenged.
Well, I was going to question whether the shot putting requires a flat stomach.
Nearly every discipline.
Right, I'm now going to list quite a lot that don't. This could take some time. But there's the hammer. There's, please help me, somebody.
It didn't take as long as you thought.
Yeah.
He did say nearly every discipline.
Yes.
Didn't he?
Do you think it is nearly? I mean...
well, I have to judge, and so I'm giving him the benefit of doubt on this occasion. I will try and redress the balance later if I have the opportunity. 21 seconds, still with you, Clement, on flat stomachs, starting now.
Running, jumping, hurdling spring to mind as exercises in which flat stomachs are essential. On the other hand...
Tony, challenge.
No, I don't think it's essential to have a flat stomach to run or jump.
On this occasion, it's not essential. You might be able to run or jump with a stomach which wasn't flat, and so I give you the benefit of the doubt on this occasion. Redresses the balance, doesn't it? And You have it, Tony. A point on flat stomachs in 11 seconds, starting now.
A lot of people go to gyms to try and get flat stomachs, but the ludicrous thing is they drive there and then get onto a running machine and do all sorts of things. Why don't they just get themselves into the...
So Tony Hawks is then speaking as the whistle went, getting an extra point. He's now equal in second place with Paul Merton, and they're a point or two behind Clement. Freud and Tony, your turn to begin. The subject now is skiving. Tell us something about skiving in just a minute, starting now.
I reckon that most people have skived at one point in their life, but there are certain jobs where it's rather tricky. For instance, if you're Prime Minister, you can't exactly invite Jacques Chirac over and then be found on the golf course whilst he's waiting in your office. However, it would be fair to say, and some might, that certain members of the royal family have turned skiving into a job in itself. But I wouldn't be of that opinion, because it might make me unpopular, and I'm a terrible...
Charles, you challenge first.
Well, I think he repeated might, and then he hesitated.
Yes.
Which one do you want?
I'll have both.
So the only thing I did...
So then I get 2 points.
No, you can't have 2 points. Definite hesitation. He did repeat might. Anyway, 31 seconds, skiving with you, Charles, starting now.
When you skive, it doesn't really give you a feeling of satisfaction, because all the while you know you should be doing something else, even though you may at that moment be having a lot of fun. But I do
Tony challenged.
That's what gives you the satisfaction.
So what is your challenge?
Deviation.
No.
Oh, okay.
You could have had him for hesitation.
No, I know, but I didn't want to.
No, I do think, actually, to be serious, I mean, you can have the fun and enjoy it. Others do have a conscience about it.
Well, let's have a chat, you and I, about it afterwards.
Yes. Well, I make the comments, I throw out the lines.
I agree.
So
I mean,
so you come back with the
something
laughs.
a lot in common on
so
this
we
one.
come back with the laughs, which is all what the show's about. But you still have the subject, Charles, with a point, of course. 18 seconds on skiving, starting now.
I live in an area of North London where I feel that most of the workforce that come to attend various parts of my house spend a great deal of time skiving. And I get very annoyed that I am about to pay them a huge amount of money when they fail to make an appearance.
So Charles Collingwood, with points in that round on skiving, has moved forward. Actually, he's moved forward so rapidly, he's now actually in second place. It's a very close contest as we move into the final round, I'm sad to say. Clement Freud is still just in the lead. He's only 2 points ahead of Charles Collingwood and only 3 points ahead of our equal third place, Paul Merton and Tony Hawks. It's still anybody's contest, if you are interested in the contest. You're not, nor am I. I'm in the points. And Paul, the last round is going to be taken by you, and the subject here is famous last words. Tell us something about that in this game, starting now.
There are books that collect famous last words, and I suppose if you've lived a fairly anonymous life, here is your last chance to actually make a mark. You're on your deathbed, you're not feeling too good, prepare something beforehand, and just as the doctor's looking down into your eyes saying, well, I'm afraid there's not much hope, look up and say something pithy, witty, exciting, controversial, and then die. But don't make the mistake of coming up with this marvellous statement, then saying something stupid and then popping off. Because after all that preparation, it wouldn't be awful if your last words were, I keep thinking it's Tuesday. It's not going to get you into the reference books. If you look...
Clement has challenged.
Repetition of book.
Books that time, book before.
No, we're book and books.
Book and books, book and books.
He started off at the beginning and says, books been written about this.
Book.
No, he didn't.
If only somebody was taping this, we could find out, we could play it back.
Now, Paul, if only you hadn't lied earlier.
You're quite right, he did say books. The thing is that, and he owned up earlier, yes, he admitted that. So, benefit of the doubt to you, Clement, and 20 seconds on famous last words, starting now.
When it comes that my time is up on this solid earth, I hope that I have the good grace and presence of mind to conjure up some witty, epigrammatic...
Clement challenge.
We've had witty before.
Yes, you did have witty before, definitely.
It's got nothing to do with you. There's a vociferous woman in the third row, Nicholas.
No, but it does show they're following the show, doesn't it? And they are with it.
Yes.
Every word. So Clement's got in with 11 seconds on famous last words starting now.
Perhaps the most famous and memorable to me last words were of the man who said...
Charles challenge.
I thought there was a bit of a hesitation
I thought
there.
there was too, Charles. So you... Oh, it's getting sharp. It's towards the end, and there's 5 seconds for you, Charles, on famous last words, starting now.
This old family friend of ours lay on his bed and said, I wish I'd bought more whiskey when it was 10 shillings a bottle.
So let me give the situation. And the final score, it's all very, very close. There's only 1 point separating all of them. And in ascending order... In a very strong fourth place was Tony Hawks, because he's only 3 points behind 4 points behind the winner. And in a very powerful second place was Paul Merton. And in a really challenging second place was Charles Collingwood. But just 1 point ahead was Clement Freud. So we say, Clement, you're the winner this week. So it only remains me to say thank you to these 4 exciting and provocative and stimulating players of the game. That is Paul Merton, Tony Hawks, Charles Collingwood and Clement Freud. I also thank Claire Bartlett, who's helped me keep the score, and she's blown her whistle so delicately. And we thank our producer-director, Claire Jones. We are indebted to Ian Messiter, who created this game, and we're very grateful to this lovely audience here at the Wimbledon Theatre in Wimbledon, who've cheered us on our way with joy and panache. Thank you from our audience and from me, Nicholas Parsons, and from our panel. Thank you for tuning in. Be with us the next time we play Just a Minute.